Good evening, everyone. Mr. Carabello, can you please call roll?
Sure. Good evening, everybody. Mrs. Palomo?
Here.
Mrs. Carrero?
Here.
Mrs. Gandhi?
Here.
Mr. Hyatt?
Here.
Mr. Lansky?
Here.
Mrs. Mendez?
Here.
Dr. Miskowitz? Mrs. Seward?
Here.
And Mr. Cohen?
Here. Thank you, Mr. Carabello. Good evening, everyone. I'd like to just draw everyone's attention to a few items in our agenda. First, the Sunshine Law. Today's meeting is pursuant to Open Public Meetings Act. Thank you, Mr. Carabello, for publishing the agenda and the notice. This is a public meeting, so we will be videotaping that for the entire meeting. So as far as anyone's expectation of privacy, please note that the meeting is being videotaped. We will have an opportunity for public comments twice this time, actually each meeting twice. So we will call you up based upon the list, and hopefully if we have exhausted the list, if there's anyone else who wants to speak, we'll give you an opportunity. And because this is a school and we have a no vaping or smoking policy, of course, please obey that policy either on or around the school grounds with no vaping. So can we all rise and please say for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, everybody. Okay, we're going to begin our agenda tonight. Let's starting out with announcements. Mr. Carabello.
I have no announcements.
Thank you.
Under communications, I have something.
Thank you. Mr. Ballone.
I do have one announcement. With respect to kindergarten registration, especially as it relates to both Asher Holmes and Robertsville Elementary School. We are currently at capacity for those two schools. So moving forward, any registrants in those areas who are slotted to go, kindergarten registrants slotted to go to Asher or Robertsville, at this point in time will be redirected to the Abbott Center. Of course, we have exceptions, right? And we always want to accommodate for extenuating circumstances, exceptions like siblings in those buildings. So we did put out a communication and a big thank you to Marlboro Township for partnering with us and communicating that message out. Not only did we get that word out to those families we normally can't connect with, right? Because sometimes they're new families and their oldest child is a rising kindergartner. So, other grade levels we're able to get to pretty readily, but the township did a big favor for us, and we do appreciate that. We also have the highest number of kindergarten enrollments for this time of the year in history. So we have 238 registrants so far, which is great, and we'll just increase from that. We're looking at about another 100 students or so, maybe give or take, and that's really all we're looking for registration. We are going to start communicating new kindergarten registrants if you are in the Asher and Robertsville areas. Without considering extenuating circumstances, you will be enrolled at the Abbott Center, and that will be communicated to you at registration. And that's all I have.
Thank you, Mr. Ballone. Quick question. You said that we had 235 district-wide. Is that 238 district-wide, or is that just at Asher and Robertsville?
District-wide.
District-wide. And at Asher and Robertsville, I heard you say we're at capacity. Is that capacity consistent with previous years, or is that a high capacity as well?
So the capacity at Robertsville and Asher, we left a little bit of wiggle room for maybe a late registrant who has a sibling, and we can still accommodate, right? But for the most part at this point, if we don't have any extenuating circumstances, those new registrants will go to the Abbott Center. So right now we're looking at class sizes in the low 20s, which is usual for our kindergarten rooms. But we will, like I said, if we do have any late registrants who come in, generally speaking now with siblings in one of those schools, we do like to keep those children together if we can.
Great, thank you. Was there any other?
Yep,
Ms.
I have a
Stewart?
question. Are you prepared for Abbott filling up? Like, since we have such an unpredictable amount of new registrants, what's the hypothetical if Abbott fills up?
We are. So we are prepared. We've done, I know Mr. Caravello runs birth rates each year, so we have a projected number of enrollment. So across the district, kindergarten is always a wild card, so I can't say with 100% certainty. But if we had to, we could open up another section. It just means another body, right? Another teacher
Right,
that we
yeah.
would have to hire. So I think we're going to be okay, but if we have an increase in enrollment, we're ready for it. It's
Okay.
just we didn't
Yeah.
quite plan for it,
The
but we are ready.
private
if we
schools are
need to.
waitlisting. That's why I think we're seeing it, like, in the area specifically, we're seeing a big influx in younger families with the construction. So I just wanted to know,
Mhm.
in the case, they're not going to go in trailers, right? We're not putting 5-year-olds in trailers?
No, we will not.
Okay.
Any other questions for Mr. Balone? Thank you, Mr. Balone. Okay, we're going to move on to your presentation on student achievement. Sure.
Ms. Gross, do you want to come up next to me here? Because we have a screen, so we can use our microphones. Yes, you can. So we have a short presentation for you regarding student achievement in the district. I think it's worth saying, for starters, this data is, a lot of the data that we're going to talk about relates to the recently released school performance reports by the New Jersey Department of Education. And you should understand that the data you're looking at is essentially a year old. So this is data from last spring's state assessment. And that right there should tell you something. Because when we look at data and when we're looking at student performance, the best indicator for remediation with students, in this case, is timely feedback. So I say that, again, most of this information here is state-level data. While state-level data, and I've said this before, state-level data is one data point in our school district and a source of, for the, let's say, the larger community. That's what what is published out in the community and how our schools are doing academically. It's not the only data point that we should be looking at. So from an educator standpoint, which I know everyone is not, but from an educator standpoint, our job is to really communicate the importance of all of the data points that we have, state testing being one of them. But we have so many other data points here in the school district. And in my opinion, I'll talk about it in a little bit, and Mrs. Gross will as well, the data points we have locally are much more actionable, and we can address student achievement either on the upper end or even the lower end much better than with the state data that we get. Zach, are you advancing our slides for us? Oh, we do. Where's the clicker? Oh. Okay, so I did mention New Jersey School Performance Report. That's the name of it. You'll see it online that way. You can easily search for it. Again, the 23-24 school year. So the spring of 24 is when our students took that test. We are going to discuss performance versus growth. Those are two distinctions that sometimes when we're looking at these reports, especially just online, if you're Googling it, you may actually be looking at a growth report and you think it's the performance report and vice versa. So we're going to talk about the difference between the two, and we'll actually show you what they look like. We're going to talk about how we compare to our surrounding school districts, namely the Freehold Regional school districts, the pre-K through 8s that feed into the Freehold Regional. how we use data to target and action instruction locally, the performance report highlights, and we were acknowledged by the New Jersey Department of Education, and I'll say by our internal data points and assessment protocols that we have here in the district, and we'll talk about that in a few slides from now. So what you're looking at here, very important, remember on this previous slide, on that first arrow there, it said performance versus growth. So you're actually looking at performance here over time. And we went all the way back to the spring of 2022. So you're looking at a dashboard, I guess. So you're looking at ELA is on the left-hand side, and math is on the right-hand side. So in the spring of 2022, you have 70.5 performance and 61.9, so essentially 62% in math. And as you look across now to the right-hand side, spring of 23, our performance went up both in ELA and in math, from 70.5 in ELA to 72.9, 61.9 to 64, and now if you look in the spring of 2024, which was last year, we also went up. Now, we went up incrementally. This is district-wide information, right? So it's not grade level specific. There is grade level specific information that you can dive into and look at on a more granular level, but this is good news, right? This is showing you from 22 to 24, we consistently grew as a school district from the performance end. So our students are performing better year after year. Now, of course, we have pockets, grade levels, we have students, all the way down to specific students who will always need remediation and help, and we also have students who will always need enrichment and advancing forward, and everybody in between. And we do a really good job at individualizing instruction for every single student in our school district, dependent on their needs, on both ends of that spectrum. So this is really good news for us as a school district as we continue. It's great news historically. It's now tough news for us moving forward because we're only expected to get better for next year. And that is really, that's our goal. Our goal is to be better tomorrow than we were today. It just becomes more difficult as you get better. And that's a nice segue now into growth, right? So again, this was performance. Now, if you look at the next slide here, we're talking about historical growth. And we're only giving you 2 years here because growth looks back on the previous year, and the school closures did not allow us to look back for the 3 years. So remember, growth is the amount of actual growth based on your performance. So as your performance rises, generally speaking, your growth will be smaller. And what can help wrap your head around this is this analogy. I want you to think of an Olympic athlete, and maybe you swimming as an example. Olympic swimmers, to shave time off their swimming time, because their performance is so high, their growth is smaller, right? In order to really shave time off their personal record, it becomes, their growth is going to be much smaller versus the average person who is not an Olympic swimmer, who maybe trains for 6 months. Their growth will be great at the end of that 6 months because they'll train, they'll be conditioned, and their growth will be higher. So when we look back at our performance here, we have, as we advance and increase our growth, and we can look from, let's say, just as an example, look at math, which is the right-hand side of your screen, and just compare the spring of 23 math to the spring of 24 math. You have a 1.5% increase, right? So with that 1.5% increase, you look at the growth. The growth went from 50 to 48. growth actually went down technically. It's still in the green, but it went down because we got better. So I hope that helps you wrap your head around performance versus growth. We really focus on performance. Obviously, we want high growth as well, but we hone in on performance and figure out how we can increase our performance. And then growth, obviously, in some cases, in this case especially, will look worse, but it's actually a good thing that our performance is so high. Mrs. Gross, do you want to take this slide?
Sure. So when we do look at the data when this is released, we do compare to similar districts. We're an I district, so we look at districts in the regional area that have a similar demographics and are either GH or I. And when we did look at that data, and we don't just look at it internally, we actually compare with the regional school districts, and I actually meet with the other assistant superintendents and directors of curriculum, and we compare notes, because we have a really good relationship with them, and we say, please tell me what you've done to do so well in grade 3 ELA. And we talk about that. So across the grade levels at test, we are always either number 1 or 2. We, depending on the year and depending on the cohort of kids, but we're always at the top. This year, actually specifically, grade 3 ELA, we were number 1, which is important and noteworthy because that's the first year the kids take the online NJSLA, and we were 11%. We were at 11% higher than the district that was placed at number 2. So that's a huge jump. We had a whole meeting just to talk about what we're doing in our early literacy programs, and we discussed how we do have a phonics program and how we also teach comprehension and writing, because you don't want to focus on any one area in literacy or ELA, because you could be really strong in phonics and then you don't focus enough on comprehension or reading comprehension or writing. So we have a nice balance. Not only are our programs, but also our curriculum that's written by our teachers. The work with our coaches has been instrumental in that. But again, I just want to repeat that we were number 1 in grade 3, and that was 11% higher than the district that was placed number 2, which was something that the regional district was really interested in knowing more about. And again, I think that speaks to our ELA programs. Mr. Bowman, our ELA supervisor, is extremely intelligent and has done a lot of work with this over the years, and it's been deeply embedded in everything we do, and our teachers are experts, and it shows. So that is something worth sharing. Did you want to talk about the magnet programs?
Sure. So many of us know, and if you don't, so there are basically 2 types of programs. When students leave here in 8th grade, they can either apply to Monmouth County vocational programs, and we're lucky enough that our students also have similar access to programs at the Freehold Regional High School District. Very noteworthy to mention here, we have over 100 students who were accepted into the Freehold Regional Magnet programs, and over 80, I think it was about 85 students into the Monmouth County Vocational School District, which is, they're just huge numbers. These programs are not easy to get into. They have a very tough application process, and our students historically do very well. In fact, we are told that Marlboro students stand out when they get to high school, and we hear that a lot. We're proud of that, and we want to continue moving that forward. As I mentioned before, we always can get better, and that's going to be our focus. But putting over 185 kids into magnet programs as they leave here is something we should really celebrate. Here you see many of our staff members, and they are smiling, so they're happy to be here. I'll jump down. Actually, Oh, one more time. Okay, there we go. I was like, I can't see it. I'll jump immediately to the bottom, and then we'll go back up. We keep our staff members here on average of 13.2 years, which is really commendable. That means people are happy here. They love it here. They are dedicated, and you can see them right here. This was on one of our staff appreciation days. I'll give a little plug to our local Dunkin' Donuts, both on Ryan Road and here on 520 and 79. They have provided free coffee to our teachers on, actually all of our staff members, I should say, on staff professional development days, and even coming this Friday for Teacher Appreciation Week, they are providing free coffee, unlimited free coffee, to all of our staff members. So I just had a phone call yesterday with the owner, and he just absolutely loves our school district, loves what we do, and believes wholeheartedly that we need to support and invest our youngest learners, because those are our future workforce. So more to come on that, more partnerships hopefully with them, but they are so appreciative of us, and we are so appreciative of them. So staff members, if you're listening, or if you hear this later on the recording, bring your ID this coming Friday, unlimited coffee, as many times as you want. All right, so now back up to our data. So I did talk about the state data, so just as sort of a reference for timeline. So in the spring, NJSLA administration takes place, which is what we're living right now. But looking backwards, so last spring, we administered NJSLA. Those results do not get here until the fall. I'm going to repeat that. So students take the assessment, let's say in May. So we're here only in June, right? Then we go through July, August, September. We get the first file that is not usable. And then October is where we get usable files, and we normally report out to the board the results. Those students are 2 months into the next school year. So remember what I said about timely feedback on standards and assessments? That does not help us. Well, I should say it helps us a little bit, but it's not effective in addressing issues in the moment. During the year, during the academic year, we have common assessments, we'll say for argument's sake, once a marking period. I know in math we do that a little more often, but for argument's sake, it's once a marking period where every student in every grade level takes the same assessment. Those are tightly aligned to our pacing guides, tightly aligned to curriculum, tightly aligned to standards, and our teachers do such a good job, and our school administrators. Teachers provide the assessment. In the moment, we can run reports immediately. Once students hit submit, we can run reports on where they did well, where they need remediation, where they need enrichment. And our school administrators, along with their local data teams, their coaches, vice principals, and teachers, all come together and look specifically at every child and how they've done on specific standards. And they immediately, within a day, I would say, go into small group instruction and differentiate learning for those students and remediate those skills in the moment. So you see the stark difference, right? State assessment, they're in the next grade level when we actually get the usable data. Local assessment, they get the information the next day, and they can act immediately. So here we are moving forward now. We're in the spring of 25, so we're back in the cycle. NJSLA administration. This summer, we will make revisions to curriculum and common assessments. You'll see that on a future board agenda very, very soon for curriculum work that comes out of the curriculum office. And those revisions are informed oftentimes by our data teams at the building level, our district data team at the district level, and state assessment information, common assessment information, and we also take feedback from teachers. I should mention as well, we work in tandem with special services to make sure students get the appropriate accommodations. So students who are taking our common assessments with accommodations. We work very closely with the special services team in accommodating the needs of all students. Is there anything else you want to add?
Just want to add a couple more things just to give some acknowledgement. Thank you for covering everything. Obviously, I've worked under Michael Balone for a while as an ELA teacher. He was the ELA supervisor, then the director of curriculum. So I have to say all of these processes have been in place for a long time, and it's to the point where our teachers have, if you took any piece of this away, they would be, banging at the door asking for it back because it's become a part of everything they do. Even as a teacher in the district, I was using common assessment data, breaking it down, and remediating immediately. And so I just want to give some acknowledgement to our data specialists are really important in all this work, because what they do is they are experts at collecting all the data and really breaking it down, and also taking feedback from teachers to see what information that they need to do what they need to do in the classroom. So it really gives them time to focus on students. And they also provide data and information so that the principals and supervisors and coaches can have really, really specific, targeted, intentional conversations about every single kid in their building. They have at-risk sheets that basically they continue to add data almost, I would say, weekly or monthly as information is coming in. They are using formulas to pull it in, and they are keeping an eye on every kid. So if that impacts the RTI process, we're super consistent across the district because of these key players, I guess, and making sure that all the data is consistent and timely. And it allows us to really make sure that we're addressing the needs of kids immediately, and also providing enrichment for those who need it. I would also like to acknowledge, I know I acknowledged Mr. Bowman, our ELA supervisor, before. He's been here, also worked under him as a ELA supervisor. But our math supervisor, Ms. Caliente, has also done a tremendous amount of work, really working with first one group of teachers to dive very deep on the teacher-created assessments and really unpack the standards and make sure, because what they were finding is the kids were not doing as well on the CAs. And I know Mr. Balone spoke about how the CAs are important because they're timely, but they're also a good predictor of how they're going to do on the NJSLA. So she has done this work with teachers, which they have loved and appreciated the time to really dig in. And they realized that some of their assessments were not as rigorous as they should be. And the feedback from the teachers has been amazing. They're like, oh my God, our CA scores from last year are flying up, which again is a good indication of how we're going to do with our NJSLA, which I think is what you saw with our school performance report this year, where you saw an increase in math because of the work she was doing. So now she's working with other grade levels doing the same work. And now we have teachers from other content areas saying, can we do this work too? So our teachers were so lucky to have them because they are intrinsically motivated to do the best job that they can do, and they ask for time together. They ask for time to dig into data and to look for ways to improve their instruction and to help their kids. And even with our grade 3 kids doing so well on ELA, we have kids that need something different, and we listen to them, and we've made changes to help support them when they're trying to differentiate for kids who are needing support in grade 1. Or any new kids that are coming into the district. So I just wanted to make sure that I really acknowledge our principals, coaches, data specialists, supervisors for the work they do every day, because it is very consistent, and Mr. Balone has been a big part of establishing all the processes that we have in place that we've used for years and years.
All right, and then I believe this is our last slide. So I did mention the New Jersey Department of Education did acknowledge us. They actually came here. The assistant commissioner at the time, Dr. Linda Eno, that's the picture on the left with Dr. David Greer. They came in and just learned all about our local assessments. And I actually did share with her at the time that my wish, if I were king, would be that state assessments would go away, provided that we could prove that we have a really tight assessment system locally in-house. I'd like to think that someone heard me say that, because they're actually having discussions about that right now. And you know, it's been a little longer than I would have liked, but they're actually starting to engage in that conversation about you know, keeping federal funding, but provided that local school districts can, if they can prove that they have standards aligned assessments and they really can determine where students are on the continuum across the standards by grade level, that perhaps, big maybe, we could do away with state testing, because it's redundant, in my opinion, right? And it's actually, the data we get does not help us as much as our local data. You'll also see on the right there our very own Mrs. Gross. She's actually working with the Department of Education. She's working, this was on assessment design. This was one of, the same year she was actually, so this was, I believe, in New Jersey, but this same year she actually went out to New Mexico and worked on a national level and looked at state testing items to be sure that they were sensitive to all groups, right? So as an example, if an inner city child were taking an assessment, would that child understand, you know, maybe an article about farming tools? Or if it was about farming tools, to make sure the article defined what those tools were, and vice versa, right? Would a rural student understand maybe some context about maybe an inner city life, or you know, relate to it? So there was a lot of work that they did in terms of accessibility, and to be sure that there were fair assessment questions, and that was the national work that she's done, but this was more on a local level, correct?
Yes, and we brought Marlboro to the table because they were so intrigued by the conversation that they actually brought a whole bunch of DOEs from across the nation to sit in the room I was sitting in, just to listen to the conversation we were having. It was really interesting work, and I did take that work back with us to analyze our own common assessment, so it was really meaningful and helpful.
Thank you so much. I hope that gave you a little bit of a glimpse into some of the really good work that we're doing, and the performance growth that we've experienced over the last 3 years.
This was great, and I'm sure there's probably some questions, so let me just first turn to the board and see who would like to ask any questions. Ms. Seward?
Respectfully, this is my third presentation on data collection since I've been a board member. When was that Department of Education meeting that you traveled nationally? Because I feel like I've been holding my breath to eliminate state testing. What year was that those pictures were from?
I think that was 19, was it? Yeah.
19?
Yeah, it's been a while. That's why. But now all of a sudden it's coming to fruition. So someone heard it somewhere.
I know. I feel like there's just been a lot of turnover since then, so I'm just getting impatient. Thanks.
You have any additional questions? Ms. Seward, any other questions?
Oh, thank you.
Anyone else have any questions? Ms. Mendez?
I did. I think, which I thought was interesting, was the part where you said that they were trying to kind of glean from what we've been doing, which I thought was great. Were there any things that we took away from these conversations that were insightful for us to learn from, that we're going to implement, or something new? Just curious.
You talking about from the state visit?
Yeah.
They were actually looking to learn from us. They really, that was, I think, the first time that they heard anyone with the idea of possibly doing away with state testing, and I really like to think, now she has since retired, Dr. Eno, but I really believe, or like to think, that she got that somewhere, right? Like in her retirement, saying, look, I'm retiring, I'm leaving this place, but I'm going to leave this with you, Department of Ed. And you know, they've had some restructuring there as well with their commissioners, and we're hoping moving forward now with the new commissioner who's not acting anymore, he's in place, that there are really good things to come. But no, the purpose of their visit was not to necessarily offer the great things that they think we should be doing. It was really to witness really for them to learn from us.
Anyone else for questions? Quick question for you, or Ms. Gross. Thank you. This was a great presentation because I think it really just frames for us the importance of what you do in the district from a testing and success perspective for our students versus where the state's testing is. And, I think the value here is that, I think you've explained to me once before that high schools, whether they're the regional schools or whether it's the magnet programs or even the Monmouth County system, looks at our regional data when they assess a student for a mission, but not the state data. So I think it's really important that you're focused on that and that you're taking immediate actions to it. It's a true example of how data is informed, data being used to inform decision-making also drives action and success. So congratulations on that. My question to you is, how, and I know you sort of spoke to the importance of it to the teachers. How are the teachers using this? What resources or what tools are you giving to them so that they have the data at their fingertips to sort of be able to be right there in front of the students?
So we have a platform called Link It, and that platform is really awesome. We've had it for a really long time, and I'm going to say this. I know it sounds like we're showing off here, but it's true. They look to us to improve their platform because we use data so well in their platform. We're probably one of the first districts to start using it. So what it is this is the same platform that the students take the CAs, but it also allows the teachers to take results literally immediately. Like the kids could finish the test one period, period one, and by lunch they could be taking that information and grouping kids by standard and, addressing that the next day. So it's very intuitive, but we also provide training, and that it happens a lot through our coaches. And we also, again, we have like our spreadsheets and the work that our data specialists do, but the Link It platform is a really important piece of being able to run reports, be able to manipulate data. It's all, they can literally pull from all their classes or one class or one small group of kids and really manipulate it to whatever their needs are to address the needs of the kids. I don't know if you want to add anything.
Yeah, and then in addition, not that online programs are the end-all be-all, because they're not. Sometimes there is a place for paper and pencil and sitting with a small group, and teachers do that all the time. But we purchase online programs that are standards-based. So when we pull those reports from Link It, we can sit very easily. Teachers can pull small groups of students, and let's say they're working with a group individually. The teacher's actually working with a small group. There could be other groups throughout the classroom working on an online program through some of the standards that they need to remediate. So there's a balance between technology, no technology, but that all comes together in the spirit of remediation and timely feedback. I'll continue to come back to that because that is the most important, especially, I'll say, math is a little more concrete in that sense. If you can address skills that are deficient immediately, math is such a building block type subject where you can address it in the moment. So then application for the next more advanced mathematical concept that kind of is dependent on that original concept can be fixed in the moment and not, we don't have these misconceptions going on for days or weeks and then having the students then now struggle on a more difficult concept that's related. So it's really important that we bring all of that together.
I just wanted to add one more thing. It's not so much at the classroom level, but at a higher level, we also use this information to target professional development. So like I said, Ms. Caliente has been working with math teachers to really hone in on teacher-created assessments, but also it helps teachers be reflective in how they're teaching. I have one example that I can give you from when I was teaching. When we first started to administer CAs through Link It, I found that me and my colleagues at the same grade level found that our kids did not do so well on a nonfiction text question. But at that time in the marking period, we were heavily focused on narrative. And what we all realized was, oh my God, we need to infuse more nonfiction text. So we started to, the next year, infuse and have students synthesize both nonfiction with fiction. And that question, we saw a huge difference next year. So it's not just about remediating for kids, but it's also helps the teachers reflect on their teaching, and also for the district to reflect on any kind of curriculum revisions.
I just had 2 questions, or one for now, but where we did see the growth, which I thought was good, what were the things that may have changed that helped us to get to that growth, if you have that data quantified?
We do, yeah. So I really believe it's the incremental steps that we took over the years to, it all starts in the summer with our revision of pacing guides and units of study, especially in ELA and math. That's where we have the bulk of them. And to Mrs. Gross's point, the teachers really learning about themselves and saying, you know what, last year this didn't work so well. We've also provided common times, and we're going to get better at this as well, but during our professional days, teachers are hungry to articulate amongst themselves, right? So if we could get, all of the 5th grade teachers together in one room and talk about what works for them across the district and start cross-pollinating between, all of our elementary schools, as opposed to just working, in isolation. We're trying to offer more opportunities of that, and people learn from themselves better than really anyone, right? So if I know that my crosstown neighbor at Asher Holmes, let's say, and I teach at Dugan, is doing something really well, and they're for a particular standard or in a unit, we're trying to provide opportunities for teachers for that, and we're seeing really good success. Sometimes logistically it's hard, right, because we don't have that many pro days, and it's difficult to get people together, but when we do get them together, they find real value in that. So we're going to try to explore more opportunities for that. So I believe that's all part of why we're seeing success.
Yeah, I appreciate that, because then, Mrs. Gross, you made a really good comment about how some or all, I don't know, use the data, because I do the same thing, to drive change also, right? So if I know, so do we do that? Is that the practice per se, that holistically across the district, we're taking all of the data and looking at those hot pockets and revising the curriculum across the board? Or is it that it's, because you brought up a good point, some teachers are looking at their data, and so holistically, I'm assuming or hoping that we're quantifying the data and looking at it to say, we have to spend more time here. Is that something that happens?
So, I would say it starts with the district. I meet with supervisors and data specialists, the district data specialists, several times a month, and we look at data. Again, it's coming in constantly. So we're looking at performance, we're looking at standards and seeing where kids are needing some more support. And again, that could be looking at how teachers are instructing, or it could be meeting the pockets of kids that need more support, or enrichment, the other side. Then the buildings do, they have grade level meetings, they have meetings with coaches to discuss kids that are on RTI, and then the coaches will have grade level meetings as well, and they'll give resources or instructional resources for the teachers to use to address any kind of areas that we're seeing kids struggling with. And then at the classroom level, the teachers will use the information that's kind of been trickling down. So it's consistent. I think that's really important to all of us here, is that it's consistent, so that one school's not using these 3 pieces of data and then another school's using a totally different set. It's all consistent information that we're all looking at. And then the teachers get, like I said, the at-risk sheets. The data specialists will even break it down for specific teachers, so they're only seeing their kids. One example is ELA middle school. There's ELA teachers who have a spreadsheet with all their kids, and as they're completing common assessments, more information is added, again, through formulas, so that they can see, because it's a little different with ELA because the standards essentially are repeated, so they can see within the same school year if they've addressed it with that student. So they'll see, or they'll see from last year, okay, the kid, this same student did not do so well on this exact standard, maybe main idea. And the teacher knows that from the previous year, so that that teacher knows to work with that student from last year's data. I don't know if that makes sense, but they're using historical data plus current year data to address the needs of students.
Yeah, that actually, no, that made sense. I appreciate you clarifying. And this is my last question, I think. Just because I found it interesting then, are there trends, and you don't have to answer today if you don't know off the top of your head, just are there trends to say these are the areas, like you said about the text that children struggle with, are there trends to say here's where they're doing really well? Just a couple of pockets as like parents to say, yeah, they're doing really well with this is a struggle, and you don't have to answer today if you don't have that information.
No. I could tell you, I mean, I live it every day. I could tell you that, yes, there's always pockets, and it changes. 1 year it could be main idea. There are some consistent standards that seem to be challenging for kids. I would say main idea is one of them. That's why I use that as an example. As the kids get older, there's collecting more information from multiple resources. That's always challenging. On the math end, it also becomes more complex. I think this is why it's so important that we let the teachers get together, not just by grade level. They're also asking, 5th grade teachers are saying, I would love to spend time with 6th grade teachers to see what they need from me to make my students better prepared to go into 6th grade. So there's a lot of information that, we look at constantly in different ways. Again, it could be a standard, or it could be a whole class. It could be district level. It could be looking at a question and saying, it could just be something as simple as the wording of the question could throw kids off. And then that's maybe is taken into consideration to either revise or to, focus on language. So there's a lot of information that we're constantly analyzing. But the pockets that you're looking at, there are some things that definitely they consistently struggle with, but we address that. But then sometimes it moves, it changes, depending on cohorts of kids and things like that.
Right. Yeah. So I get the whole thing with performance and the growth, because we get great performance, we get less growth. To use your analogy, so the Olympic swimmer, right? So the trainer is going to change something. The trainer is going to change the rigor, is going to change something to get better growth out of that swimmer. So are we just teaching to like the standard, and then we're at that performance level, and then we're getting close to not getting growing, because that's where we're teaching to, or are we looking to do better and do better performance and grow more just because we can? We're at the top, right?
We're both so eager. And I know you probably have more to add to this. But again, I'm kind of going off my own experience as a teacher, but this is the same at the district level. When I was teaching, I taught general education students, and I taught advanced. I used to have, let's just talk about reading level or Lexiles. My advanced classes, those kids were already at the top. So let's say 1,500 or 1,600 is the top reading level you can have. A lot of them were at 1,500. So my expectation of their growth could only be 1 or 2 points. Whereas my general education students maybe are at an 850. I have a lot more room to get to that top. So of course our goal is always to constantly enrich students, even if they make it to the top. I've had kids who are at the very top of the reading level, and I would be feeding them, giving them access to books that maybe honors kids were, reading, as long as it wasn't interrupting the honors program. But we're always looking to enrich them, even if they've already met the goal, if you will.
And just to add on to that, so we have a lot of different programs here, for all levels of learners. I can think of one student recently. We actually had to deliver Algebra 2 to that student, and we came to the board at the time and said, we have to pay for this student. It's our job to pay for this student to move forward. So this student had taken Algebra 1 and Geometry with us already and was still not graduated from here. So we sent him, he took Algebra 2, and then he finished Algebra 2 and still didn't graduate, and we sent him to Rutgers. So for advanced math courses. So we will meet students where they are, and if they are performing at the highest level, we will find another avenue for them, whatever it takes. So we do continue. We push, but we don't push too hard where we frustrate. But some students need a little more than others, and this student clearly was very accelerated in math, and we gave him what he needed.
I hope that is applicable for the special needs students as well. I know it's different data collection, but I'd like to know if the special needs students are also being pushed to excel to the next goal, even if they're meeting standards. Some of them are, on the higher functioning of academics, or
Absolutely. Yes.
I know it's a different data collection, I'm aware, but.
Yeah, well, and some of it's the same, right? Because we have a lot of special ed students taking our common assessments. So as I mentioned, we work with special services. While they do have specific goals that they're meeting, we never want students, it doesn't matter at what level they are, we never want students complacent or just kind of getting by, and we constantly, that's the piece really on the ELA side, but is where it's a little easier to understand. But we do it in other subjects as well. But on the ELA side, even if you have a student reading below grade level, you still have to continue to push that child to read at a higher level, not to frustrate, but to slowly push them. And I've done actually research on this and presented on it. There's a great danger in complacency, especially in reading. So when you can actually take a student, an on-grade level student in reading, and not push them, not continue to push them appropriately, not frustrating, but to push them forward, in 2 years, they will be reading below grade level. So we have to continue to, with purpose, give students that little nudge and keep advancing them forward. If it's a special ed student and they're 2 grade levels behind, it might take a little longer to get there, but we have to constantly push them. Otherwise, they will remain complacent, and they will actually regress.
Any other questions? Just, one observation, and I have to say, just to Mr. Lewandowski's point, the opportunity to sort of find, the opportunity to put strategies in place to invest in the opportunities for growth, right? And I have to imagine that there's a lot of things that we can learn from other districts and from the privates as well, because I'm sure they're focused very heavily on sort of improving growth and performance. So I just, I just suggest that because I'm sure that that's probably something you do, but it'd be great to hear how we've adopted or how we've looked at some of the other strategies in going on around the state or around the county, where we can leverage that, because creating that opportunity for challenge now will also help our students grow academically at the next levels, right? High school, college, and beyond. So I think that's a great idea, and it's really, that maybe would help push our growth numbers even higher than the 1.5s, because we're pushing. So I think that's great. My last comment is that thank you for showing us how data is an important part of this district's activities. Thank you for showing us how it's being used by our administrators and from every level right into the classroom. And thank you for explaining that it is looked at the district-wide level, but you have the ability to drill down straight into the student and sort of, use that data to help sort of take immediate actions. That, to me, is, what it's all about. So I appreciate that. Thank you. Okay. That was excellent. Thank you. All right, so our next item on the agenda is, because today is also our public hearing for budget, right? Yeah. So I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Cararella.
Okay, good evening, everybody. So this is our public hearing for our 25-26 budget. As you know, it was originally scheduled for last Tuesday, but we did not receive approval in time to advertise. So to meet the 4-day requirement for advertisement, we moved it to today. So again, I'd just like to go over the budget process and timeline. I know we've gone over it many of times, but just to give a refresher before we close out this cycle of, or this year's cycle of budget preparations. So December, as you know, we did our enrollment projections. We began budget discussions with the principals. The intro budget discussion was at the December meeting with the Board of Education. In that time, in January, we continued budget discussions with the departments, with the administrators. We had individual discussions with departments also, and then we also had individual discussions with the board involving those departments. February, we continued our budget discussions, waiting for our state aid numbers patiently. They could have taken them back and given us better ones, but we received them about, I believe, February 27th or 28th. And then in that window, it doesn't give us a lot of time to then prepare a tentative budget if you lose money. And in this case, we did lose a little state aid. So March, we adopted the tentative budget. And now here we are, we have our public hearing on our budget, and then this is the final adoption of the budget. So to stipulate, there are no changes in this budget compared to what was presented at the tentative budget. So some of the challenges in developing this budget, of course, you're at the mercy of the 2% cap unless you have bank capped or waivers, which we'll get to. You always have to look at your contractually obligated salary increases and also your health benefits that are tied to those. And those are all based on your collective bargaining agreements. Your increased costs for maintenance of facilities, your increased costs for transportation services, continued with bus driver shortages, which cause us to actually go through jointures with other townships or contract out routes is a factor as well when it comes to what we have to budget for. Your increased costs for related services, such as your special education students, both in-district students that require services and your out-of-district students. The health benefits cost increase was set at 14.3%, so we had to budget accordingly for that. Again, your insurance package also is set forth with an increase. We work with our broker, and they do their best to try to keep it down. But again, the underwriters have been increasing a lot of the policies, and I think we noticed that because we did go out to RFP a few years ago, maybe a couple, and still it was across the board that's what the underwriters were doing. It had nothing to do with the broker. Your mandatory PERS pension and your DCRP contributions. So we received that number from the state. We are obligated to budget that. So as you can see, before S2, 2018, 2019, we already saw a change in state aid that was a decrease, and we just continued to see them without 24-25, which we actually saw a slight increase. But overall, in the last 7 years, you've seen about, between the Chapter 44 decrease and our state aid decrease, you've seen about close to $4 million that the district has lost in funding, whether it be from shaving off the top of your tax levy cap in Chapter 44 or your state aid decreasing. I think that comes out to about $572,000 a year that on average you would have to navigate. Some years were more, some years were less, but and on average $500,000 is what we already know we would always have to cut out of our budget. So we do take various amount of strategies to try to just reduce the tax impact. We know it's impossible to keep it under the cap because of everything going over the cap. We always have to utilize what is given to us to build our base and continue to grow. So one of the things we do request the departments to utilize zero-based budgeting. Again, it says to embrace a culture of doing more with less, but we really just want to be mindful of what's in the budget. We want to educate everybody on what you're budgeting for, what you need, what you don't need. This way, any excess or any waste can be put back into the budget or put towards students. Your position reductions, so we always look at basically our enrollment projections, and in doing so, we work with the administration the building administration to look at what positions can be moved around, what positions can be reduced. So this budget did have position reductions included in it. Again, what we talked about at the tentative budget, this is not people losing their jobs. This was just a reallocation of individuals back into certain areas where there's a need. I wanted to make that clear. One, your reduction of your kindergarten ELA coach and kindergarten math coach, and it was a reallocation of their coaching duties to the other coaches, grades 1 through 5. Reduction of 2 middle school teachers, and that was simply due to enrollment, and so they will now just be, I believe, Michael, they were from retirement, and we will utilize them in areas that we need them.
Which positions are you talking about? The
The
world
two
language?
The middle school
Oh,
teachers.
middle school, no, those are being reallocated, so just taking out of the middle school and reallocated into other schools.
Okay, so my apologies. Elementary world language teacher, you're restructuring the elementary world language program. Now, I believe that's due to retirement. And then your reduction of your instructional assistant, and that's due to just fading based off of district need for each individual student. Some of the other strategies we look to reduce, so we analyze the utility trends, and we always try to accurately budget for utilities, and unfortunately sometimes that's hit or miss. We go by basically what is projected to us. We know that in June of 2025 this year, we're going to see a huge increase in rates set forth by the BPU, so we're just trying to anticipate that for next year. We try to utilize our reserves to offset money in the operating budget, so any capital projects or any facility maintenance we can do, we try to do that out of our reserve account, specifically our maintenance reserve account. And then we utilize our surplus and our fund balance to help offset any other inflationary increases that we know are coming. So your surplus and your fund balance are your base of your budget when you're building your revenue side. And that really, you try to stay consistent with that, because if you do not, you'll be making more cuts than you anticipated. So you always try to be mindful and plan ahead and know what your surplus is, where you can allocate certain things back to reserves, because you want to maintain a healthy surplus so we can continue to just function and set forth a normal operating budget. The last one was as I talked about, your bank cap in 205,256 is we're utilizing that. That is part of the tax levy, and then also due to the high health cost increases, the state has given you a waiver to apply for. We're applying for that as well in the amount of $1.8 million to try to offset some of the health benefit increases we're seeing, and I believe it's 15%. So some of the, we went in depth through the departments. These are some just overall budget highlights. So in this budget, these are some of the key components that we strive to continue year after year. So we maintain all the instructional programs and services, so that includes your core subjects, your special education, and your related arts. Even though we lose and state aid is reduced, we continue to keep that core mission value a part of us. Also is maintaining the current classroom staffing levels. So our teacher to student ratios, we try to just maintain those at a healthy level so they do not increase. And if they do increase and we do have bubbles, that's what, again, when we talk to building administration and we just gather data to make the best informed decision and make the class sizes the correct amount that we're used to here. We continue to focus on student achievement, and that's in all areas of the budget. Everything is based off of student achievement. So like when I say if there's excess in certain budgets such as B&G or transportation that not utilized, we try to reappropriate that funds and bring it back to the students if there's no need for it in those departments. We sustain our technology hardware and our infrastructure, our IT infrastructure. One of the things we do on a rotating schedule, we budget for Chromebooks, a replenishment of Chromebooks, because those devices age out. They phase out in about 4 years, and they stop being supported. So we continue to just update that cycle so we never fall behind with student devices. And we continue to support all the shared services we have with the township, and that includes the Class 3 officers and our SSOs. Now in special services, we're establishing 2 additional sections of the ERI program, one for grades 1 through 2 and one for grades 6 through 8. So there are no reduction of services for special education students in the 25-26 budget. The curriculum includes replacement textbooks and also other ancillary supplies for your maths grades 2 and 5. And this is a similar way of how we've been doing it in years past, where we go on a basically a payment plan for textbooks, and we budget accordingly throughout each fiscal year, so we don't have to pay all of that cost up front. Your transportation includes a replacement of 4 54-passenger buses and 2 25 passenger wheelchair vans. So we basically cycle out our old vehicles, budget accordingly, again, to keep that rotating stock of just having functional things in the district and newer things, so we don't have any emergencies or breakdowns or things that, might bite us in the end when it comes to, trying to operate fully and functionally. So when I talk about the maintenance reserve, the projects that we try to offset out of the operating budget, here's a list of the projects that we're doing with that $600,000. So in that list you have, again, we try to do our district-wide asphalt and concrete repairs. So we'll work with our engineer and we'll see where the area of need is, and we'll utilize those budgeted funds, go out to bid and see how much we can do within that budget cycle. Your flooring and tiling at Old Middle School and Robertsville. So again, there's some areas that we have noticed walking around with the B&G director is that a lot of these areas need to be upgraded. So we'll budget accordingly for that. Last year we did the auxiliary gym A in Marlboro Middle School. This year we're doing the remediation of Marlboro Middle School auxiliary gym B. So this would be the second phase of basically part 2 of 3. Our third part next year will be to do the full gym remediation. So we are budgeting for a storage shed at the B&G facility. A lot of our things are really not secure at the Morganville property, so we do need to have something there, basically just secure our tools and our equipment. Middle school's HVAC systems are aging, so we are budgeting for univent cleaning at the old middle schools. You have district-wide painting that will be used where appropriate. Brick repointing at Morrell. We're planning on upgrading our burglar alarms at Dugan. And then there's a couple of other ones where we're refurbishing the auxiliary gym at Marlboro Memorial, and also we have to tie in some HVAC controls and fire controls for Art to use at, I believe it's Tofino. So again, one of the things we also look to do is partner with, whether it be the township or other neighboring districts, for shared services, which will help try to drive the cost down when it comes to having things that we desire in this district, but also being efficient, as efficient as possible to have them. So a lot of them we do with Marlboro Township. So we do have our SROs, our Class 3s through Marlboro Township. We also purchase our fuel for our buses and maintenance vehicles through the township. We do a joint reverse energy auction to purchase electricity with the township, I believe every 3 to 5 years. So that's actually coming up, which actually helped us in the long run, because where everybody's seeing increased costs, we're locked into a rate. So that actually, it does help us partnering with the township with that stuff. MOESC we utilize for purchasing goods, because they've actually opened up that window now. We actually use them for regular education and special education routes, non-public services, and then Frio Regional School District we partner with, and they handle our aid in lieu, so our non-public student payments. So this is your projected enrollment for next year. As you can see, both your middle schools are the majority of your enrollment, where then Dugan is your highest elementary school, where it's projected to be 516. Our total enrollment is projected to be 4,513. So not so much of it of an increase. Really, it's flat. I believe last year was like 4,511 or somewhere around there. So we try to build the enrollment based off of how we really think our kindergarten level is going to look, and we do pad that based off of what the news was tonight, is that, it could possibly get to that level, but we are always prepared for that of the incoming students. So your expenditure total, so this is a breakdown of your total expenditures. As you can see, the total expenditure number is 102,254,945. 75% of this is instruction, pupil support, and benefits. As you can see, the breakdown of the other areas: administration 7.6%, transportation is 6%, your maintenance and operations is 11.2%, your capital outlay, which is your Fund 12, all your equipment, is 0.3%, and your staff development is 0.2%. But the rest is your benefits, your pupil support, and your instructional salaries. Your revenue total has to match your expenditure side. As you can see, your local tax levy is at 89 million. That's 87% of your budget. If you partner that with your state aid, you're at 95% of your total revenue budget. That's where all of your revenues are coming from. So those are your two most integral parts of your budget, along with your fund balance and your surplus, which I explained how we want to keep that at least at a moderate level so we can continue to set forth a budget with not massive cuts. But every time your state aid goes down, you have to recoup those funds somewhere, or you have to make cuts. Unfortunately, some of the other areas, you really can't, there's really not much wiggle room to recoup some of the funds that you actually lose through state aid reductions. We actually did see a bump in interest earnings, and that's due to the high interest rates. Extraordinary aid is usually set forth flat. Again, extraordinary aid, if they don't fix that formula, that's another formula they need to fix when it comes to the reimbursement of special education costs. That would be another area that would help us drastically as well. So with that being said, just our tax levy is 87% of our budget. The state views us as an I district. So that is one of the indicators that's also used to basically predict how the taxpayer, what's their ability to pay. So that's where over adequacy and under adequacy come into play. So when your district factor group is considered I, they're basically saying that your adequate level of spending is this amount. You're over adequacy, so you really don't need any help from the state anymore. That's why you see your reduction in state aid. They feel like you can go more to the taxpayer and lean on more of the taxpayer for revenue rather than the state. So this information actually comes from, we like to share this every year, this comes from the Taxpayer's Guide to Educational Spending. So this is basically just a look at your staffing and your efficiency. So on the left side, you'll see your state average for your K through 8 districts, and on your right side, you'll see what we are. So your budgetary cost per pupil average is $20,367. Our cost per pupil is $18,994, so we are lower in that category. Your student to administrator ratio, so the average is I'll round up 130 students per administrator. We're actually at 180 students per administrator. Your faculty administrator ratio is at 15 faculty per administrator, and we're at 19.8 faculty per administrator. And then lastly, your student teacher ratio is 10.2 students per classroom teacher, and we are right there at 10.8 students per classroom teacher. And the reason I like to share this is because I know one of the topics is always administrators, but you could see that each individual administrator services more than the average K through 8 district when it comes to how many students they have and how much staff they have under them. So your average property tax bill in 2024 for other I districts, as you can see, we fall in that category. Again, not directly in the middle, but not first. But if you look at other comparable I districts, so a lot of districts that are incomparable in size and also how many buildings and how much staff they have. You have East Brunswick, I believe, which is a lot larger than us, but Livingston has mostly been compared to Marlboro Township over the years. And then you have Princeton Regional. So again, this is based on your average assessed home of $500,000, and this is from the Department of Community Affairs. But we just like to give you an overall sense of, you know, we may be going over the 2%, but we still are mindful of what our average property tax bill is, and we try to stay within that realm to not really exceed it too much and try to, you know, blow it out of proportions. We really only go for what we need or what's available in that time. Other than that, if we don't need to exhaust those options, we wouldn't go those routes. So your total tax impact is about 4.35% this year. And you can see your tax rate is about 1.135, and it breaks down basically your payment for your average assessed value for what your taxes are anticipated increasing by. So you have your $300,000 assessed valuation of your home all the way down to $800,000, and then it'll show you basically, so your an $800,000 assessed valuation is anticipated to see a $265 tax increase for the 25-26 budget, and then in yellow you'll see that the 5-year average from the last 5 budget cycles. So that is it for me for our public hearing. Does anybody have any questions for me?
I do. That was loud. Two things. First one is, if you can just explain a little more about the ratio of students to administrators, a little bit more about what that means. I understand student-teacher ratio, but tell me more about what that one is.
Well, that's basically just the ratio it takes by what they classify as administrator and how many students we have, and it just breaks it down basically by that ratio. So it's saying that each administrator in this district would be responsible for 180 students, ratio-wise.
Is there an impact? Because there's a decent difference between the two. Is that a hindrance to us? Is it okay? There's 130 on one side and 180 on the other. Just curious as to what that would mean.
I mean, everybody would love more help, but I think we've been very efficient for what we have. So I wouldn't say it's a hindrance because I think we operate very efficiently with the administrators we have here. It's just basically to show that I know sometimes a topic of conversation is, well, we are top-heavy and we have too many administrators. The statistics say otherwise.
Thank you. The other piece is the 4.35% on the taxes, just to clarify that one, because I understand that Mrs. Seward in the last meeting brought up the Freehold Regional potential increase, right? Because I think they're voting on that of 13%.
Yeah, that's TBD tonight.
Right.
Yep.
Coupled with the potential 4.35 here, just putting that in perspective, because differentiating, but ultimately to the Marlboro taxpayer then, right, that could be a significant increase. Just, I know we're not the 13%, just putting that out there.
Yeah, so the 4.35% includes your 2% cap that you're allowed to go up to, that you're allotted to, your health benefit waiver in the 1.8 million, and your available bank cap that you had from left over from a previous year that you didn't utilize. So that's what makes up the 4.35%. In reality, the health benefit waiver, it helps really offset the health benefit costs, because if we didn't have the option to take that waiver, we would have been talking about cutting possibly $3 million out of this budget. And so that does help without having to change our outlook and our makeup so drastically. So, because if you're cutting $3 million out of a budget, you are taking staff coupled with those benefits that you have to lower. And the caveat is that waiver, you lower the benefits, the waiver is low as well, because it's calculated by how much are you putting forth with benefits, how much are your true benefits. And the county asked for that too. They want to see a breakdown of your benefit costs, who's getting what, and your total, to make sure you're not inflating that to get a bigger waiver. So it is within reason of why we're taking this. It's not just like we're taking it just to have additional funds. It's really to help offset the health benefit costs that we're facing. Does anybody have any other questions? Okay, thank you.
Can I just stare at that chart for a second?
Yeah.
Just so I'm reading it correctly. The 4.35% is not the amount that we're raising taxes. It is the total percentage of your tax bill that goes toward funding education.
So your total revenue source for your tax bill, that's 87%. It's your 89 million. That's the amount we're raising our tax levy by, 4.35%.
Right. So it's our levy, but not. But it's
right.
The total levy per household based upon your
right. Our
assessed
actual
value.
tax rate that we have is 1.192 for the 25-26 budget.
Which means 95.65% of what I pay per year in taxes is going someplace else.
Give or take, it depends how much each other individual piece of that pie raised their taxes or
right, but the 95.6 is just going someplace else, whether it's Marlboro Township, whether it's Freehold Regional High School, it's going someplace else. The district here is getting the 4.35% of the assessed bill that I'm paying.
No, so the 4.35% is basically what you're raising your 24-25 tax levy by. So your nominal tax rate is your 1.192. So on your tax bill, the schools do take up a bigger portion of your tax bill due to the culmination of how many times schools have had to increase their taxes to keep up with the ever-growing costs and to fully fund education. So really, your tax rate is 1.192. The 4.35% is what you're building your tax levy by.
Thank you.
Vinny, I just have one more question, because it's not sitting well with me, the average home in Marlboro Township. Is everybody okay? It's like, if we're all paying attention to our local, comps in our neighborhoods, I'm not seeing many houses going for $497,000. So I just was wondering if there was going to be an updated average house value, because
Well, so I go by what the Community Affairs tells me, Department of Community Affairs, and their average in 2024 was 497,214.
There's a difference between assessed value and.
That's your average assessed value.
Assessed value is different than what you can sell it for.
Yeah, some homes with actually large property, but yet it's been designated farmland, will assess at a much lower value than a home that will be next
I
door
can add-
that's not raising animals.
Yeah, so like so basically the middle part is your 500,000, your assessed valuation, and that's where we start. And then you have your assessed valuation going below, and then, is everything okay?
I know, I'm just
Okay.
communicating with both of you at the same time. I have Chris in one ear, coughing in the other. I'm just trying to focus, sorry. Thanks.
Thank you. Any other questions for Mr. Caravello? Thank you very much, Mr. Caravello, and great work. We appreciate it. Always, again, a very clear and concise budget and not an easy thing to communicate. Okay, we are continuing with our agenda. We are at the discussion items. Mr. Malone, you have before and after care program?
Yes, Mr. Caravello and I, well, actually, let me back up. Back in March, I met with, and some of the parents I see sitting here, so thank you for coming. Met with or spoke with on the phone and got some of their concerns from the current year from the YMCA. I won't list all of the concerns, but I'll kind of list some of the high-level concerns that then Mr. Caravello and I brought to the YMCA when we had our first negotiations meeting. The big one was opening on delayed openings. Now, we've only had 2 delayed openings this school year. I'm going to knock on wood, and we don't have any more. Remember, delayed openings are not just for snow. Could be for anything. They're called, it's for emergencies. So we had 2, but it adversely affected some of our families. So some of our families who need to get to work early, some of our families are teachers in other school districts, and when we have a delayed opening, it requires them to not have the ability to go to work because the before and after care program did not provide any service during those delayed openings. So both of us did communicate very strongly that we need an option for that. What that looks like, we'll come back to you. They're also going to come back to us with their decision. Now I'm coughing. I did stress to them very strongly that while not speaking for the board, and I was very clear with all of our families, but I did say if we do not have an option for a delayed opening next year, it wouldn't shock me if we went out for a program that would provide that. So that was a big item that many of us, many of the parents I spoke with, that was a big item on their list to say, look, we really need that, even though it was only 2 days this year. That weighed heavily on our family. So I did share that. Some of the other things, communication, their system, their online module or portal, little difficult to navigate. I know I had someone basically say that if they miss the deadline, there's no flexibility in joining. They have assured me that there is, even if they tell you there's not, or maybe in their publications it says there's a deadline, that they have to publicize that. But if you reach out to, I know Stacy Listella said, look, reach out to us individually. We will make sure we provide the flexibility. So There's a little bit of confusion there. Maybe you were reading their literature and not talking to someone. We urge you, if you have any circumstances where you need some flexibility, reach out to them, and they said they would surely be happy to help. The other big item, and again, as I said, I'm not going to touch on all of them, but another big item was the use of our secure vestibules, and that is a non-negotiable for us as well. So we had to address the previous company in using them, and we've had to address the YMCA this year. They've been very responsive, and they should all be using our secure vestibules. If they're not, I only know what I know, so please report to us if they're not. And but from my understanding, and I actually did some site visits, they are using them, and I haven't heard anything lately. So my guess is that they're using our secure vestibules. The other piece, they are not going to increase their rates. Well, there's a little caveat there, right, Mr. Caravello? They're not going to increase their rates overall, but there is going to be an increase in the drop-in rate only. So right now, I think they're charging $20 for a drop-in rate. They're going to bring that to $25, which is actually in line with our previous provider and in line with all of the other school districts they work with. So they did want to work with us that first year to say, okay, we can bring that rate down, but they need to bring that up in order to fund their operation. But everything else is going to remain unchanged. Mr. Caravello, anything else you want to add?
No, I think you hit all the points.
They need the one-day-a-week program. You want to mention that?
1 day a week.
Oh, so they, yes, they did mention that they were going to create a one-day-a-week program that would be cheaper than the drop-in rate that they're setting. And I know that wasn't an offer for them this past year. I think they started with a 2-day program, went all the way up to 5 days. So they will be offering a 1-day program as well, is what they said, to try to provide more flexibility if someone just needed the 1 day.
Thank you. So, I appreciate the efforts that you're taking, and this is a great first step, and actually great several steps, because you've had several meetings with, not only with the parents in the district who are using the services, but also with the district, so this is great. What's the next step for you?
So the next step is for them to come back to us. They're going back to their team and determining all of those requests that we've made to see if they can actually carry them forward. So we're in the process of that now. If we don't hear from them in the next week or so, I'd say we'll reach out to them, because we need to get them, Mr. Caravello, on the agenda really for July 1, right?
Yeah, so we would be putting it on the next agenda or the June agenda for renewal for the year, because they would need to start with their summer camp, because even if we didn't have a provider, we would still need someone to provide a summer camp for us.
Thank you. Questions from the board? Okay. Thank you very much for that. We look forward to hearing back from you on next steps. Referendum recap.
Okay, so I wanted to bring to the board just a referendum recap, basically of where we are, where we're going, maybe some history. I want to try to continue to do this each meeting, similar to how we did with the budget, just to continue to keep it on the forefront and talk about it. I know there's a great presentation that our bond counsel provided to us from an NJ ASBO seminar we had attended in June. It was a couple of years ago, where I think it would be beneficial to provide to the board and present it in public, and it basically goes over the whole process of a referendum from start to finish, and everything that is included in it. So you might see some of that stuff next week or the next meeting that I'm going to talk about now, but this is from our lens and what we've been doing and what our role in it is. So again, the referendum for 2025 is just HVAC additions for Asher and Robertsville. Now, I know a lot of people have been utilizing like HVAC upgrades, but you have to have something there to upgrade. There's nothing there. So there is only HVAC in your media center, in your offices, and in your gymnasium in Asher and Robertsville. So that's one of the things that I think we all need to clear up as a township, is it's not HVAC upgrades. It is HVAC additions. Because the classrooms where the kids are and the staff is do not have anything unless they have a medical note, or the student has a medical note and they have a window unit. So again, just a quick overview. I won't read it in full, but we are planning for a public referendum to secure funding for air conditioning at Asher Homes and Robertsville Elementary. The total cost of the project was originally estimated to be at $3.2 million. We received, and I believe I said this the last meeting as well, we received information that we need electrical upgrades in both schools, and also the tariffs are a concern when it comes to, you know, we have to make sure that we don't sell ourselves short when we're going out for a referendum, so we need to make sure that all the costs anticipated in going into this thing are included, because a lot of the costs that we have to set forth and put out up front are included in the referendum that we're going out for. So there were multiple funding options to be considered when we originally brought this to you during the budget time. We ultimately chose this route because by seeking voter approval, the district would be entitled to receive debt service aid. Now, debt service aid is up to 40%. Our bond counsel came here in February and basically said more like 30%, but you can apply for 40%, but he hasn't seen more than people getting 30%. Still, it's funding that we as a district should be fiscally obligated and responsible for if this is something that we want to go after and get the project fully funded for at least 30%. And then the 70% would come out of reserves. Other districts, if they don't have reserves, would have to go out with other funding sources, whether it be notes or bonds. But we all pay taxes. Clearly, from the last presentation, we all pay it. So why would we not want to try to recoup some of those taxes in the form of debt service aid? Everybody else gets to do it, and everybody else in Monmouth County that I know has gone out for a referendum. They've actually secured lots of funding, and a portion of that is all of our taxpayer money. So why not take a turn in trying to do that for ourselves and really get something that's going to benefit children and staff for the long haul, not just for tomorrow. So this is the graph that I showed you months ago. Basically, it showed you your options. So your first option, which is what we're doing, is to go out for a second question referendum. Now, the numbers have been updated to reflect the new amount. Option 1 required voter approval. Max of 40% funded by the state debt service aid. That could come up to a total of $2.1 million. The balance of your funds would come out of your capital reserve account of $3.1 million. The district, if the district can save the monies. If we cannot save the monies and our surplus is not high enough and we can't designate it for capital reserve, you would have to go out for a different funding source, whether that be a long-term bond or a short-term note. So you'll be seeing in June, you'll be seeing on the agenda, you'll see 2 motions, and it'll be basically designating a deposit to your reserve accounts, your capital reserve, your maintenance reserve. We do it every year. We're required by our auditors to do it. We just have to set a not-to-exceed amount. So I could set a not-to-exceed amount of $2 million. Doesn't mean I will be able to put that in there, but at least the motion's on there. So when my auditor and I have a sit-down, we go over our surplus and our fund balance, and I say, yes, that's what I want to put in there. So we are going to be setting forth basically 2 motions. Will be for your maintenance reserve, for your capital reserve. We're going to set the motion to where we want to put enough in there to fully fund this project with a little bit of extra, because we don't want the case of just draining our whole reserves just for this. So we are going to try to be mindful with it. Now, keep in mind, this process, we have a December election, so when we're building this, In December, I'm going to be coming to you with the 26-27 budget already, and we're going to be halfway through the fiscal year. So that gives us almost another year, by June closes out, to put more into our reserves that we may have depleted from this project. So it's really, it's the long game, but it's also something that we need to plan now for if we really want to do this, rather than not doing anything and then just fully funding the project out of the reserve accounts, because that's what will happen. If we cannot pass a referendum and we still want this project as a township to be done, as a district, as a board, as a community, we are going to have to fund it some way, and that could be your other funding sources. Option 4 is completely out of the table. We've attended meetings with them, we've sent letters to them. They are just not funding these projects unless you have an approved referendum on the table. They're not doing it because they feel like it's circumventing voter approval, and technically they're not wrong. So I don't believe we're going to get that. Option 3 is your 5-year equipment lease. Again, your 5-year equipment lease, that's a way to stretch the payments over time, similar to what we do with textbooks, similar to what we do with sometimes devices, anything we can do to try to stretch your money long-term to fit in the operating budget. But you are paying interest on that. So you are going to pay interest on that. And I believe a lot of that can't be, actually none of that can be funded out of your reserve accounts. That has to be budgeted in your operating budget. We've actually spoke with the county. You cannot use a purchase lease and fund it out of a reserve account. It has to be somehow implemented into your operating budget. Similar, how do we implement the ESIP payment we do every year in the operating budget? And then so your option 2 is we pay for it ourselves, but that's going to require me having to save and me having to basically be smart with our surpluses, be smart with our fund balance, and be able to pad that reserve enough to where we can start doing a school or chipping away, whether it be half a school or a full school or a school and a half or just something to get the project started, but we will be funding it 100% out of our reserves or out of our operating budget, or by some good grace, we get additional state aid that we can just start putting back into the budget. So I just wanted everybody to see that, because in essence, you have 3 options here. You do a purchase lease, you pay interest, you pay for it all of yourself out of your reserves or operating budget, or we try for the referendum. And I think it's the most fiscally responsible thing to try to get the project funded 30%, maybe 40%. Maybe they see that we haven't done it in so long, and they want to give us 40%. Maybe they're feeling generous. That's why we're going out in December. It's the holiday season. Everybody should be in a giving mood. So you're not going to be able to see this. I will post it online. I just wanted to try to cram as much information here as possible, and then everybody can access it online and see it for themselves. So these are the costs that go into what we're doing. So your first one was your bond counsel. We had him here in February. He was approved on the March 11th agenda. Already that's been approved is the $8,500 that needed to be approved for him to get started to represent us as bond counsel. After that, if the referendum passes, then another approximate $14,800 will go on the agenda for next year, which you'll have to approve for him to actually secure the funding and be able to work with our financial advisor to be able to basically lock this in. The scope of work included in that is, again, acts as a specialized legal advisor for the school district, ensuring the bond issuance process is legally sound, financially viable, and attractive to investors. He is basically our conduit to securing this funding, working with the Monmouth County elections, and basically having this question on the ballot in its rightful form and how it should be presented, and making sure we don't miss any deadlines and any dates or really anything for that matter. He's hired to really try to help us see this through. He also works hand in hand with our district financial advisor. Now, you'll see, we'll get to that. The next service involved in this is your architect. So we approved Tokarski and Millman on March 18th for the amount of $18,460. And in that approval, he built the specs. That's where we learned about how we had to have electrical upgrades. So they go out with their engineer, they do their updated specs, they look at everything with an in-depth review, because what they have to do is they have to prepare a Department of Education project application, which we approved also. And basically he's sending in to basically get the project approved so we can get forward with putting it out on the street, getting it out to bid in a timely manner. Because at the end of the day, the question will be in December. You want to at least know your figures before you even send a question in. And that's where that estimate comes from. They build that estimate. And when they build that estimate, they also include all the costs associated with the estimate. So $5.3 million includes all of these costs in there to recoup. So again, our architect will attend meetings as required to discuss project components, and he will be involved heavily with the committees involved with this referendum, and we'll work with the communications committee to provide information regarding to the project specifications. So everybody will eventually cross ties and work together. Now your third one, Laura Bishop Communications, that was approved at the last meeting, and that is for $40,000. And in that $40,000, their scope of work was a website with comprehensive facts and other materials to be the source of accurate information, collateral materials that may include flyer and or postcard based on districts, social media strategy, your slides for an in-person or virtual presentations. Again, we elected that we will not be doing virtual unless necessary, but virtual also might be an option if a lot of people cannot attend and we want to expose this to everyone, because not everybody can attend with children or for anything for that matter. So we want to make it as much accessible as possible to everybody who can be involved in this. Another one was the coordination of your on-site website. So they will build a website for us. They will have streaming opportunities for community engagement. They will post facts, questions, videos, voiceovers, anything that we want, but they will manage the communications and the marketing of this. And they specialize in this. Now, everybody keeps asking me why I did not go out to bid or go out to RFP. First of all, it's under the bid threshold. Second of all, it's an extraordinary unidentified specific service. Not many people have expertise in this, New Jersey bond referendums and marketing, and not everyone has a proven track record of having a success rate that they do. So you can find any communications company you want, but if it's going to be successful, I don't know. They may not have any experience. And I don't know how I would ever recommend a communications company that has no experience in securing referendum funding or even passing one, which I believe they have an 85% success rate in passing the referendums. They just passed one next to us for $100 million. We're assisted in it. 86, okay, thank you. So that's why we put them forth, because we want this to be as successful as possible. We don't want this to fall flat on its face like some of our other referendums have, and we have a history of referendums going back to 1985. Can't wait to show you guys.
Sorry, I don't mean to interrupt you, but would you say that, going back to past referendums, that column 1 and 2, which is the bond counsel and the architect pre-referendum, that cost was paid for previous referendums that did not pass, is that correct?
Yes, and
Okay.
every other district associated with referendums includes these costs in their referendums as too. These are the factors, the key components that go into, these are the ingredients.
Right.
into
So
securing the
roughly,
funding.
and again, I understand that previous years may have been slightly lower, but we're looking at anywhere between $20,000 to $25,000 over the last 3 different referendums that we paid for and lost, and we didn't pass the referendum. Okay, thank you.
Just a question. I'm going to wait till the end, but do you want us to ask per slide?
You can, so it's fresh and
Okay, because then I need to go back to the beginning, so I'll wait. That's why I was going to wait till the end. I took my notes. I want to be respectful, so,
this one?
yeah. Tell me more about the logo. No, I'm just kidding. I wanted to be respectful, so that's what I'm saying. I'll wait till the end.
No, it's fine. I think we need
She
to have.
sparked the
I think we
question,
need.
so I was like, I'll
I think
ask
we need
them.
to have a healthy conversation here, so everybody that's watching can also keep track of where we are.
Okay,
and
good.
what
So
we want
then-
to discuss.
My question is back one more. Yeah, okay. The first question is on the dollars, and so I just wanted to go back. So I understand option 1. I know we talked through that one before. But if the referendum doesn't pass, is it that we vote again? I may not be here, by the way. I'm saying whenever that happens, right? But then we would move to option 2 or 3. A choice is made at that point in time, or do we make a decision now? Like, how does that work?
So you would not be looking to do another option until you know for sure if the referendum passed or not.
Okay.
So in reality, when we have the special election in December, pretty much by January 1, you'll know if it passed or not. If it didn't pass, then we're going to incorporate what we've been talking about into our budget conversations for 26, 27. And we're going to basically get back on the saddle and figure out what we want to do differently if that doesn't work.
Okay.
But it all depends on what you have in your budget. Budgetarily, it all depends on if there are constraints. If there's no constraints, can we fit something in? Can we be creative to try to start this? In essence, in the 26-27 budget, we are going to start this one way or another through our reserves, whether it's funded 100% or it's funded 60%. That's really depending on if the referendum passes or not. But that's the ultimate way I would go, is utilize our reserves, because I don't think we want to pay interest
Right.
on things
And
that we
then-
don't need to do.
You had said about you're going to have in the agenda for us the not to exceed amount. And you're saying that when we vote on it, that whatever the dollar amount comes to, it's not going to exceed that particular amount, right? So you have some wiggle room in there is what you're saying for
Yeah.
whatever that might be. But you're letting us know that when we vote, it will not exceed X dollars. Is that correct?
So if people go back to the last meeting we had, now again, we've been doing this a little bit different approach. It's not like I'm just slapping on a service on the agenda and saying, vote for it. I'm bringing these people out, and I'm letting them have healthy conversations with all of you so you feel comfortable before we award them in what they do and what their role in it is. That's similar to anything else we put on the agenda. If it says not to exceed whatever the amount is, that means I can't go over that amount or pay a bill over that amount unless I come to all of you again for reapproval.
Yep.
And I believe they basically said that it will go over, but they would eat the cost because they want this to succeed. So they're saying that the cap is $40,000 for us. Anything after that, they're going to take on themselves. The only thing that's not included are promotional materials,
Right.
and that falls on us.
And
And
I'm
that's
gonna
something that
come-
we can take on our own. We don't need anybody else to do that for us.
Correct. And I'm going to come to this
But how do
slide
you-
since you're telling me to do it in order. Did you have a question here?
I just want to have a question on that.
Go ahead.
How are you going to take that on yourself when printing? So if you look at Manalapan, who I've spoken to, they send a mailer to every resident's home.
Yeah.
That could cost upwards of $10,000 to $15,000 by the time you have printing and mailing. They talked about pizza box stickers. To print a pizza box sticker, you're looking at another $10,000 if you do.
But we don't need to
enable
do
that.
pizza box stickers.
But if they're making the design work and we're getting this design, and that's included in your $40,000 not to exceed, we're going to get the designs and then not utilize them?
So they can make the designs, but we can utilize them how we see fit in other marketing tools that may be cost efficient for us. Doesn't have to be a pizza box, doesn't have to be a flyer over Belmar Beach. It could be anything that we want it to be.
So we have on here that we're going to get a flyer and a mailer, but that, and there was other things in the contract that were not included. What are we going to do with these materials once we get them if we're not going to print them? And what is the cap on the budget that we would spend with printers and mail houses, post $40,000?
So if I'm understanding that you're asking all of the promotional stuff, how are we paying for that?
Right.
We would have to pay for that in our operating budget, but it depends on how far we want to promote this. They're going to work with us in designing and running a website. It could be all electronic. It doesn't have to be physical form.
But I thought that the point of hiring them is because we want to meet the audience that's not on social media and not virtually. So we would have them design materials in a $40,000 budget that we're not going to print, or we may print, but there's no
But who
budget set.
said we weren't going to print them?
But then we need to know how much money that is projected to cost, because that could be another $40,000 when all is said and done.
But that's unfortunately, if you really want to make an omelet, you have to break a few eggs. So I understand.
Right, but $100,000 all in to promote a referendum that may or may not pass seems like an exorbitant cost.
On a $103 million budget?
Yeah, it still does to pass
I have a
a
question.
referendum.
Where are we getting this $100,000 budget from? Because I know
I don't,
promotional material, I mean, we've all done this, we do this for a living as well. $100,000 seems excessive. That's almost $60,000 in promotional material. So I want to understand, how did Mrs. Belomo come up with that math? Does she have a grid that she can share with the board? I'm very interested in knowing. It's going to be helpful for us, so we want to make educated decisions, that's why.
But I don't know, but all I know is we can control the level of promotion we want to do. So the pizza box stickers we may not have to do. There are other ways to get in touch with everybody without breaking the bank. So as far as the dollar amount goes with how much we want to promote, that really is up to us and what we feel comfortable with promoting for this referendum. But they are going to work with us to design all of this stuff and get there.
And then we may not do anything with it.
Who says we wouldn't do anything with it?
That if we don't have a budget, if we're not going to spend the money to print it, then we're not going to do anything with it. So it's one of the, or we're just going to put it online, which is something that we could do ourselves in-house.
We can't because we don't have the expertise that they do for a referendum.
We don't have that. Aditi just said she was in, she does this for a living.
Aditi's not an employee here.
Correct. And volunteers can't run this, unfortunately. We
Sure.
need professionals to do it.
Do you think Laura Bishop Communications can help us identify some of those targeted audiences that might not be, super engaged, where I feel like we can kind of target that and not break the budget that way? Like maybe the senior citizens in the community. I don't know if that's part of what they're kind of targeting.
But I think that's part of their strategy when it
scope of
comes to
work.
their outreach, is they're going to tell us how to achieve that.
Exactly. Thank you.
Because we may not be equipped to know how to get in touch with all of those different demographics or those different areas that have a vote.
Were you able to look at the materials that were distributed from Manalapan?
I did, yeah.
And you looked at all of the flyers and the pamphlets, and did you see the associated costs with that?
No.
So I did, and that's why I'm bringing this to the table, because it seems exorbitant for what we're trying to pass. Their referendum that they were trying to pass was for, $115.4 million project. That's a lot more than what we're trying to do. So to invest the same structure of communications for a much easier to understand referendum, like I said, seems like a waste of money.
So let's just take $100,000 and let's look at it the positive way. So you're saying that if it were to pass, you're okay with just not going off the referendum because of the $100,000 that could potentially be in advertisements, but we're okay with leaving possibly $2.1 million on the table to take for a project that we don't have to maybe fund out.
No, that's not what I'm saying. I'm saying that the Marlboro taxpayer and voter understands, do you want the HVAC project? What does that mean? Air conditioning in the 2 remaining schools that we don't have. If you look at Manalapan, what their referendum included, it was a page long of things that were included in that referendum. We do not need the same level of communication for a one-line HVAC or no HVAC vote for our taxpayers. They understand what it means. It's air conditioning or no air conditioning. We are not trying to explain a multi-level, piled high, $115 million referendum to our taxpayers.
But that's where this district has gotten into problems of not being able to pass referendums. It's constantly just edit things and edit things and edit things rather than just going out to what we truly need to succeed. And that's the 2 remaining schools and all those children and those staff members not having air conditioning in their classroom when all the other elementary schools do.
100%, and I am all in favor of the referendum. However, it is a very easy one question, air conditioning or no air conditioning. A communications firm that's going to cost, or at least approach, 6 figures seems exorbitant for a one question air conditioning or no air conditioning referendum.
The communications company cannot approach 6 figures because we only approve them for $40,000. So that's the only amount of money I can pay to them unless the board reapproves something for higher.
So we'll approve all the printing, mailing, promotional, taxes, shipping, we'll approve all that.
Yeah, the board should be involved in all of that because we're the ones.
So each cost will come to the table and we can say.
I don't know what costs you're
For like
identifying. You really need to help me with where you're getting your numbers from.
Printing, mailing, promotional materials, and then there was also shipping, extra fees for services, extra design fees. It was all listed in the contract. So each one of those fees that they said will be billed separately will come to the board and we will approve each one of them. Is there a cap? Is there a number that has to be met before we have to approve it? What does that look like?
Yeah, that's all negotiable. You don't have to do anything with that.
But if you choose to get the designs and then you do print them, we will approve them line by line.
If you would like to approve them line by line, I will give them to the board fully. But I don't understand why you're against this referendum.
I am not against the referendum.
Okay.
I am against the communications firm.
I have a
Strongly
question.
against.
Since you
Me
looked
too.
at the numbers, can you quote how much the same communications firm charged Manalapan if they were working on the $100 million budget?
I'm so focused on
No,
working
I'm
for
talking
Marlboro,
about,
I don't.
I'm talking to
I
Mrs.
don't know what-
Paloma right now. Since she has all the information, it would be nice for the board to know. Would you be able to tell us how much they charged the Manalapan district?
No, you can reach out on your own.
Oh, okay, great, thank you. So you don't want to share information, and I'm just, okay, thank you for telling me that you're not going to share the information with the full board. So there's a possibility that it could be a lot more, because it was a much bigger scope of work, right? They're looking to do a lot more, so there's a very
Their
strong
flat fee could
possibility.
have been a lot more than ours, yes, than
Correct,
what was
okay.
quoted for our size.
Right.
No or not?
No, that makes sense. I just wanted to make that clear, that, because I know it was brought up right now, that $40,000 for a 3.5, when Manalapan passed a $100 million budget, I just want to bring things into perspective, that we're getting charged $40,000, whereas Manalapan probably got charged a lot more because they were working on a $100 million referendum. That's all.
Possibly. I don't know what Manalapan was charged for, so this is 5.3, theirs was 100 million. The cost to scale may be different, but I don't know if that's what we were quoted at, but we can't go over 40,000 with them.
Correct.
All the other promotional stuff that we talk about, that's our realm of how we want to handle that. So they will work with designing us with that stuff within the 40,000, but how we want to successfully navigate that and promote it, we can take their ideas and we could do it ourselves if we truly want to. If we're worried about, driving the cost up tremendously with the communications company.
Can I just,
I don't understand what you mean by
that's
do
what I was gonna say,
it
too.
ourselves.
What do you mean?
Like, what does that mean? Like, print it ourselves? Like, what
You
does
could,
that mean?
yes.
I could.
Like, where?
Staples?
That would have a cost, right? Staples isn't gonna give it to us for free. There's a cost
It's-
associated with it.
If it doesn't break the bank, I'll deliver.
can I just ask a question? I'm sorry, I just have a quick question. I mean,
But wouldn't the committee be approving all of this stuff?
yeah, that's where I want to go, so if you don't mind if I could just go there. First of all, I was
Before it
on the,
even
pre-
is
I
sent
was
out
on
to
the,
anybody?
I was on the previous slide, but I'll stick here and I'll ask my question here for a moment. So I'm sorry, again, I missed last meeting because I had a work obligation. I know I told the board, but my apologies on that one. So I know this passed, so that part's a moot point because I know it passed in the last vote. But my question is on the scope of work. I understand we had a contract, all of that. But back to Mrs. Belomo's question, because that was mine too. When it exceeds a certain dollar amount, and I know we get a list of bills that come to us to approve, the things that are outside of the scope, I'm asking, would the board have line of sight into that? Or is it that we don't? Like, what would happen, I'm just genuinely asking, if they build the website?
All of the promotional materials that get approved or anything we do has to go through a referendum committee, which they set up. So we're not going to send anything out until it's approved.
Yeah, that's fine.
And
I'm
the
just
manner of
asking
how
on
we
the,
the manner of how we send it out is really up to our discretion.
my only question is on the board level of insight. I understand the referendum committee, I get that whole thing, whether I agree or disagree, it's not that point. The point is that if there's dollars that are being spent, does the board see it, or is it that these things are paid and we don't know, or is it go to the committee? Like, after the 40,000, if it were to exceed that, where's the approval process lie on any additional dollar amount?
Well, everybody will, all of you always approve all of the bills.
Right, that's what I'm
that
saying.
come
Is it
in.
on the list of bills?
Yeah.
Okay, that's what I'm asking.
It's no different than an architect.
But-
So an architect, when they charge for ancillary things such as mailing and postage and stuff,
We only approve 40 for them. Vinnie can't pay them a penny more
I
unless
can't.
we approve it. It can't be on the list of bills unless we approve them specifically getting more than 40,000. Them.
even if
I'm
they-
not talking about the promotional stuff. I'm talking about that company.
No, I'm asking in general for us as a board and for the public to understand. If it were to exceed the 40,000, which by the way, it can, because I understand there were additional things outside of it. So we can't say it's not,
but
because
it won't, because we approved it to only,
we approved it to
At
40, but
40,000.
there may be additional things. I understand, because I deal with contracts all the time. Hey, if you want this, there's an additional cost. I get it. All I want to know is if that additional cost were to come our way, right, is it who approves the additional cost? That's all I'm asking. Is it in our list of bills for us to approve? Is it the referendum committee? I just want to know if you ever see above 40, and somebody can answer. I just want to know if there was scope outside of work, who approves it, that's all.
So Val, as I understand it, the motion last week was to approve a scope of work that was not to exceed $40,000. If Laura Bishop comes back and says to Mr. Caravello that if you want these additional works done, and they're going to cost $10,000, $20,000, or $80,000, we as a board have to authorize that additional cost because the
Thank you. That
contract
was all I
was
wanted to
set
know.
at a not to exceed $40,000. Let me just finish, right, and I'll get to you, Dee Dee. In addition, Mr. Caravello, just correct me if I'm understanding this, if I'm not understanding this correctly. We're talking about two established budgets, essentially. One for the communications company to do the work that they're doing from a professional consulting perspective, right? And the second source of, or the second budget is for what we will call promotional materials, printing, the ancillary costs associated with the work that the budget, that the consultant is providing, right?
Yes, and we
The second part of
set
that,
budget.
the
We will
second
set
part of
that
that has
budget.
not been set.
We knew one.
So can I, before we have those conversations, can I suggest, because there's a lot of question about what that budget, what that cost may be, right? Laura Bishop is probably in the best position to give us advice as to what we should be expecting to see as a potential cost associated with a communications program.
Here's where I'm having a hard time understanding some of these questions. Laura Bishop Communications, the 40,000 includes all the strategy work they're going to do to try to promote this. If you take them out of this, you still have to promote it, and you still have to pay for all of that stuff.
Correct.
So that money has to come from somewhere. So I don't know how that piece is tied to them.
It's not. So that's, go ahead.
I just
But
want to
it's
say,
still gonna
though,
be there
when
even
a
if the 40,000
strategy is
isn't there.
built, right, by the way, I'm not saying anything, my question was genuine, like additional costs, which, by the way, we work with vendors all the time. A vendor can come back, I'm not, put it Laura Bishop aside and say, hey, I have some extra things I could do for you, and it would cost X dollars, and that's fine, right? Because that's what they do. But social media strategy is one thing. I'm going to develop the strategy. Now you run and implement it. A strategy versus implementation are two different things. So I'm just saying they could come back, and all my question was, and Mr. Cohen answered it, is as long as I know that there's some level of monitoring of, I'm not saying you're not, I'm just wondering the level of insight for the board of cost, that's all.
But that's what I'm suggesting. I'm suggesting that, and this is exactly aligned to what you just said. There's a cost for the services, which is what Laura Bishop is providing.
And that's
The
the
strategy includes the slides, the website, includes this whole laundry list of
Committees.
other things that they're doing, right? And then there's the cost of, once we say this is what you should be doing, these are the things you need, right? And I think that those things that we need, whether it's flyers or, forgive me for not knowing what a pizza box sticker is, okay? But whether it's a flyer or a pizza box sticker or whatever that may be, right? They should be able to tell us what that budget should look like based upon the size of our district, the level of effort needed to communicate the $3 million or $5 million need, right? Which is very different in complexity than the $100 million. But yet we have our own complexity because we need to explain also how we're funding this.
Right, but we're not
So let me
going
just add to
through
that.
for
They
it.
could come back and say, we need a targeted mailer of 1,000 people. It's going to cost you $400, right? I'm just hypothetically, all this is hypothetical until they set the strategy.
Until they tell us what the strategy is and
Or
what that
we could
potential
not hire
cost
them,
is.
and we can go and pay $40,000 for a mailer, hit the whole population, which was the wrong strategy, backfires on us. We all voted on this. I don't know why we're having a discussion about it now. I understand the questions. These are all incredibly valuable, but this is all hypothetical until we get into actually activating this. And we can't do that without expert consultants at the table to tell us the best way to communicate this to the community. That's my view. I think they're essential to this.
It's
But
sort of putting
all
the
this
cart
other stuff
before
is
the horse.
theoretical. What's that?
Also,
In some ways, we're putting the cart before the horse because
I don't even know what
we
we're
don't know
talking
what
about.
we should be spending the money on until we know what the strategy is.
but say,
Exactly.
take away the $40,000 for the communications group. We would, and I quickly calculated all the rest of, we would still be paying $260,000 for the other parts of the referendum, parts of the ingredients, you said, right? We would still be wasting all of that money.
Well, if this doesn't pass, of course, we have to shell this money out. We've
Okay.
had to try to pass this referendum, and this is how you have to try to pass this referendum.
Yeah.
I just
In
want
the
to
best
add,
The
way.
big risk is, yeah.
I'm going to add, I'm going to try to simplify this. So there are two different buckets here we're talking about. Bucket one is the communications company. They said it, and Val, that was a really good question because I had that as well. And I think a few of us asked Laura Bishop when they came presented last week. They said it's going to go up to 40,000, but not to exceed 40,000. So the scope of work, this is just, 6 bullet points I've put in there. Bullet point number 2, which is collateral materials. If we want to choose to go with a flyer or a postcard or whatever, that would fall under bucket 2. Bucket 2, so they will sit there and say, okay, well, we've done X, Y, and Z so far. We think we can add a little bit more by doing a flyer, and it's going to reach X number of people. And it's going to cost, if we print it for you, the development of it is already included in the 40,000.
It's in the scope of work.
It's the actual printing and the postage that we would have to pay for. So they will come to us and say, we have reached an X amount of people. This is the success rate. I think this is the group that we're still seeing, not the response that we want. Let's do a targeted mailing, and that goes from, say 40,000 people to maybe now 5,000. And then we're going to then take that and decide and say, all right, well, if Laura Bishop prints it and does the mailing, it's going to cost us $2,000. But if we do it by ourselves, it's going to cost us $1,000. So then we can opt to make that decision and say, we're going to be prudent in how we spend our money, and we're going to print it out and just spend the $1,000. So that's how a communications company is going to work with us. So the 40,000, we don't want to confuse the two things. They're two separate buckets. And any of those printing costs is going to go through our board, from what I understand, for approval. So thank you for asking that question again,
Before
Val.
we even go through printing, and back to your question, they are two separate buckets, but it seems like the issue is just not knowing how much it's going to cost and what is that cost. I won't know until we work with the strategist to say, hey, we're going to need about 5,000 mailers for you to go out, or 2,000 postcards, and then I say, okay, and then we look and see how much that's going to cost, and then we come back to the committee or the board and say, they've proposed that we should do this, here's the cost that I found associated with that. We can do it this way, we can do it that way, we could do it that way. So that's how I'm going to be able to really relay what this stuff costs when it's provided, that expertise is provided to us. But the $40,000, that's initially an approved communications company to help us hit the ground running to try to communicate this thing and start taking the steps to having it approved.
So
They're strategizing with us to make sure that this is as successful as possible. Because I know one of the things are we have our own communications, people, but they don't have the expertise and the strategy and the familiarity with bond referendums and knowing how to pass them and what needs to be said and what doesn't when it comes to how to promote this as successfully as possible.
And I have one more question to just ask. So the 40,000 that the communications company is going to charge us, to get to the 6-figure amount that Mrs. Balomo is quoting, we're talking about a difference of $60,000. Do you think mailers are going to cost us $60,000?
I don't know. I don't know, depending on quantity and what we need and what they recommend. I don't want to put a dollar amount on anything because I don't know.
Do you know if data is included in their costs? Because with most communication firms, it is not. And we will pay for data such as who's voted in a referendum election in the past, what demographic they are, where they're located. Data costs money. Is that included? Because it's said in the contract it's not. So I'm trying.
We'll make sure it's included.
So you're going to tell them that data has to be included even though there's a cost associated with
I will call
data?
them tomorrow and tell them I'm not paying for data.
And you think they'll agree to that?
It's not expensive.
I think so.
I know data is not expensive, which is why, as a board, we could have just gotten that same data for a couple $100 instead of $40,000. We know what we're looking for. We know which
We're not paying
demographics we need.
$40,000 for data.
I just
We're
think
paying
that
$40,000 for strategy.
I just think
Wait,
Well,
let Ms. Balomo finish, and then I'll go
I
to you
just
guys.
believe that we are spending $40,000 on the same thing that could have been achieved with $300 worth of data, a Canva account, and a cell phone. So from where I sit, it's an exorbitant cost that's being taken away from our kids. When we're cutting instructional coaches, we're going to hire $40,000 PR firms with a question mark amount of added printing and whatever else services to pass the referendum of a one question, air conditioning or no air conditioning. It does not seem logical to me, but I'm just
The
one.
second people see
Okay.
referendum,
So-
they
so
think that taxes are
Ms.
going to be
Carrero, one
raised.
second. Just give me a second. First of all, The $40,000 contract was already approved by the
Yeah,
board
exactly.
last week. So that issue, I think, is been decided, right? The question at this point is proceeding, right? So if you have the opportunity to take some of the board's concerns back to Ms. Bishop's company and express concerns over data, the concerns over the need for more clarity on what the strategy is going to outline as far as materials and things like that, and we're able to sort of give us a straw person budget for that, an idea based upon the size and complexity of the scope. Their expertise is going to be helpful to inform us. I think then the board will have more clarity on what the other potential costs will be for this, and that will allow us to sort of be able to decide as a board how much more we can afford to invest, or how much more we want to invest as a district in the referendum.
I mean, if we don't have a communications company that is an expert in this and strategizing this, I can guarantee you there's not enough hours in any of our day to just create a Canva account and be able to promote this.
We've already decided that.
That's what they're being hired toward, to help us elevate this.
Yeah.
We've already decided that. All right.
So, I'm sorry, I was just on the question. Did somebody?
Yeah, I actually, every one of you at this side of the table wanted to talk, so do you mind, I'll go straight down. Ms. Carrera, you go, then Ms. Gandhi.
Oh, no, I'm not reopening this. I totally agree about moving forward. It's just, the problem is some of the language also around it. Once people see referendum, they're not willing to it's a tax increase, and people say no all the time, not being informed. So that was all I was saying.
Thank you. Ms. Gandhi. Okay. Ms. Mendez.
I need to go back to the 17 questions I had when we first started.
Can we at least stay on this slide?
Yeah, we'll stay on this slide.
Okay,
but
because
it was
otherwise
really
I'm going to
on
go
the-
to Mr. Hyatt, and then we'll
Yes,
go
it
back
was on
to
a
you.
previous slide, but there's some here too. So just back, my question was just the simple fact of, I think you're going to come back, I think we've answered. Anything additional cost outside of the scope gets approved or reviewed by the board and then has to go through an approval process, similar to how we approve costs all the time. Just want to confirm that that's correct, right? So,
I share that same expectation.
okay, so that's my first thing. Second thing is moving off of the comms for a second and onto the other halves of it. The other piece with this special election for December, when we're paying $65,000 approximately and so forth, is that a standard? Is that something that other groups do? Is it a requirement to put it in December as opposed to other places? Because we're paying for ballots, poll workers, voting machines. I'm just curious how that came
You
about.
could put it with your general election in November. Historically, we've tried to stay away from that and try to let it be a standalone special election so we can promote it, so it doesn't, fall by the wayside when it comes to, especially this being a governor election. So you can do that and not have to do those costs, but that's an approximate figure. So I know we got information from other districts. One district was 72,000, one was 65, one was 63. So we put approximately 65,000. That includes, printing of the ballots, the poll workers they have to bring here to set up an election, your mailing in envelopes, voting machines. So that includes all those other costs that are associated with an election.
And not saying that I agree or disagree at this point, I don't know enough about that, but is that a thing that comes to the board to vote, or is that a decision that was made, or was that a recommendation?
So what will come to the board to vote is the approval to set forth a second question, to go out for a second question, to go out for a referendum. So bond council will help us put that together, and that will be brought to the board for approval. Once that's approved, we send that to the Monmouth County elections to be put on for December's election, but then all those costs come with that.
So if we
once you're
wanted,
approving
though,
that, you're technically approving all of the costs associated with putting that on the ballot.
but the date that it could be in, just asking, just genuine asking,
Yeah.
if the date that it could potentially, you said, be in November instead of a special election in December, who made the choice to put it in December? Is that selected by Monmouth County, or is that we?
I recommended that.
Okay, so you recommend that
'Cause
cost?
you
Do
can
we?
go, you can go out for November, you can go out for December, you can go out for January. Right.
Is it a
Yes,
discussion?
and that was my understanding, just not to interrupt you, and I
Go ahead, please.
apologize.
No.
But if I recall correctly, the bond council advised us and said, after it's approved, but after the paperwork is done, it goes to the state. We must give the state a minimum of 6 months to approve it. So if we figure it went out in end of April, beginning of May, you got May, June, July, August, September, possibly October, and then we have to give Monmouth County another 60 days after that to put the special election together. So I understood it as that we had a minimum of 8 to 9 months that we could not do anything, plan for anything, until in fact, from the point in which we submitted the paperwork to the state. And while the state may come back sooner, I remember the bond council telling us, plan for at least 6 months for them to approve it.
Yeah,
Right now
I
the-
remember when that gentleman was here too, so I just want to, and thank you for that, I just want to ask then another question on the data side. Is there, and you may not have this, so I'll ask somebody, is there data to show me the success rate of November referendums versus December? I understand the recommendation, I'm just asking that question of, I'd like to see the comparison to better understand. And then is it a discussion point for the board, or is the decision just, I appreciate the recommendation, I'm just asking where we come in on something that the board has to approve the costs for.
I mean, I can ask for data, but it's going to prolong this process, so it's
I don't
really-
want to prolong
we
it, I
either
just
do
want to
this or
know.
we don't.
I'm not saying, because I don't know how it would prolong it if someone just gives me a report to show me November and December, because I'm not holding any of this work up. The communications was already approved last meeting. I'm just curious to know the data for us as a board to say, hey, November has a higher success rate or December does. That would just help me to feel better about it. That's all I'm curious.
And can I add to that? If there is, a difference, to Val's point, it would set us back if we were to say now, like, let's not do this in December, but do it in November. Would it set us back?
We might not make the November. You might have to
Oh,
do
I
it in
see.
January. But
Okay, got it.
the only time you get out of the cost is if you do it in November's general election, and I believe the slide will show you that we've done ones in November and they've failed, right? I have it on here.
Thank you. And I think that's important to know that if we don't do it in December, there's a potential that we may actually just miss the mark and not be able to do it.
Right,
So-
like the story, right? Here's your timeline, right, to what you raised before, Mr. Cohen. If you do it here, you're going to miss your cutoff. Like, all of that is valuable information, so that's all I'm asking for. And then the other piece is, well, let me pause if there's questions, because I had one other question about the previous slide, maintenance and capital reserve, just
So
the difference.
can you hold it there,
Yeah,
and let me
please.
just go to Mr. Hyatt and see if he said, nope, so Mr. Hyatt has now said no more, so
Yeah,
I'll
just,
let you wrap it up.
thank you.
Unless- So this way
We'll
we
wrap
move
up on these two, and then I'll have more, I'm sure. So on maintenance, reserve versus capital, which I appreciate you were telling me, like, some money would come from either or both. Is there a difference and an impact to the district, which one it comes from? I'm just
Well, it
curious.
can't come from maintenance reserve.
Okay.
Because it's a capital improvement, because there is no HVAC there. It has to come from capital reserve.
If the HVAC was there, would it be coming from maintenance then, you're saying? I'm just trying to understand the
Technically, you'd
difference.
still be doing capital because it's technically a capital improvement. It would be a Fund 12, it's a replacement.
Okay.
So it would always be capital. Maintenance is like your smaller things, your services. You can replace a unit, but when you're replacing multiple units and it reaches that dollar threshold, the county may say you're teetering on the line of saying it's not a capital improvement when it is. So they'll want you to use
Okay,
your
thank you.
capital reserve.
So if I remember correctly, when you started this whole thing, you said, we will be talking about the referendum regularly. So the good news is that if you have future questions as a board, we get to continue to ask them. This conversation's not going to end tonight. It's not going to end until the referendum passes, right? So, Mr. Caravello, do you have more on this?
A couple more.
Okay.
But all these costs get built into that 5.3 million. So if the referendum passes, these costs are associated with what was just passed. So we are going to recoup some of these costs, or they're going to be funded out of your funding source. So right now, this is what you need to do in order to succeed. Like Ms. Carrera said, high risk, high reward. Like, you have to do these things and take these steps necessary to try to elevate this as best as possible, because we don't have a great track record. Here's a history of Marlboro's referendums that I could find. April 30th, 1985, it was about a $8 million referendum for building a new elementary school, Dugan, and Marlboro Middle School improvements. It passed. March 21st, 1995, renovations to 4 elementary schools and the middle school, HVAC at Marlboro Middle School in instructional areas. It passed. That was about $15.3 million. Then in March 14, 2000, that's the well-known one, that was the one that passed to build the Early Learning Center and the new Marlboro Middle School Memorial, which we're standing in now, for $41 million. And then after that, that's where the success kind of teetered off. So your January 25th, 2005, build additional classrooms, cafeteria, and library at the Abbott Early Learning Center. That failed. Your September 29, 2009 one, to build the 6 additional classrooms and a main office addition at Tofino School. This passed because, again, it was zero. So what happened here was they had leftover remaining funds from a referendum that was passed previously. In order to utilize those, they had to go back out for a voter approval, but they weren't asking for anything. They had it already. So that's why it shows zero. And then after that, your most recent ones were 2015, 2016. Both of these included a slew of items that were later addressed through the ESIP project, but I mean, there was tons of work included in both of these. As you can see, one was 46 million, one was 26 million. They both failed. All of these included the cost that I went over. We did use a communications company, I believe, in a few of these. So I implore the board to realize that, like, it takes a lot to pass this and to try to make this successful. It's either going to be successful or it's not going to be it's not going to be, but it's really up to us also to do that.
A question on the 2015 and 16, which I know both failed. When you said we used a communications company, not sure if we used it during those, but did we use it during those?
I will check, but I don't believe we used them in both.
Okay, because I'm curious, and if you can come back and tell us if we did, and what were the things that they did that we could avoid, right?
Because if we are going to utilize them, I would want them to do something differently if we did use them.
I'd like to look at a new strategy and who we used. Was it the same vendor? Not saying as this one, I'm saying for those two. And then I'd like to know all the things they did, and then to say, what else could we do to get creative? Because I'd probably steer clear of some of those things that didn't work. Just if we can have some of that. I'm not trying to put more work, but I am curious as to what they did. And I'd like to share that with the Laura Bishop firm to tell them then, here are things that were not successful. So if you did some sort of website that had X, Y, and Z, let's amp it up. That's all I'm asking.
No, I think that information is incredibly helpful for whatever communications committees we have and referendum committees we have, because they need to be informed with what worked and what didn't work, because you know the definition of insanity.
I know historically, from what has been told to me, the only way referendums have been derailed here happens in this room. So in order for it not to be a failure, we all need to come together and make sure that we promote it positively. Even if sometimes we don't agree with the cost, the questions are good to ask. And then I need to have the answers for you.
Yeah.
And I need to be able to provide that. But I think we also need to just have a positive approach in this and making sure we do what we set out to do, and that's try to get air conditioning for the 2 remaining elementary schools and all the kids and staff that are in it. Again, I know I love my timelines, but this was basically just a timeline of everything I went over. And right now, as you can see, May through November is really where everything starts to get kick-started. So we wait for the project approvals from NJDOE, and then we start doing everything with our bond council. In that time period, we start communicating this and start building and working with the communications company to build a committee, see how that wants to be formed, whether it flows through our committees. We have one gigantic committee. We do it as a board as a whole. There's a ton of ways we can do this. That's where the communication piece opens up.
Could I ask on the referendum committee to be formed and meet monthly? I think you just touched on it. Is that a discussion that we have of, like, what does that look like? Is that a later date? Because we are in May. I'm just curious, like, what would that be?
So we have a kickoff meeting with them internally just to see how we want this to look out, and all the feedback you give me, we're going to provide. So basically,
when you say we have a meeting with them, who's the we and the
so
them?
it's like myself, Michael,
Okay.
just to really start on a strong footing and tell them, what the board, because we can't all meet with
Yeah.
them.
Is them Laura Bishop?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah,
And
and
then-
then also in that meeting is going to be the architect, the bond council. Everybody's going to be on the same playing field and communicating. This way we can set up a formal plan to
And
to
then
roll this
how
out and
does
have
that
everybody included.
referendum committee get formed? Is that after that meeting?
Yeah, that would be after that meeting.
Okay, and then we could discuss who it would include and what role the board plays in like anything. I'm here, I want it to
Yeah,
pass, so I'm just
I mean, the
curious.
committee usually consists of your architect, your bond council, board members, people from the town. It includes a slew of people that they will tell us who they recommend, not specifically in person, who they specifically recommend, but like the roles, like, do we want somebody on there with this type of expertise, this type of expertise, that type of expertise, and then we would come back to the board and we would start formulating that committee together.
Would it be possible to get the information that Val just requested in terms of, when do we use the communications company and stuff before you have this meeting with the?
I could check that.
Okay, perfect, thank you.
Again, everybody can email me individually, and I can be a conduit and use those questions and ask. So that's not a problem, and that's actually quicker than waiting to meet here.
Right, which is consistent with the question I asked last week, which is who would be the point of contact specifically for Laura Bishop, and that would be Mr. Caravello. But we obviously have work to do to think about committees, because we also have structural concerns we have to consider in the context of quorums and requirements, right? And I know that this is a very passionate and very important topic to many on the board, so I want to make sure that we have an opportunity to sort of have, give everyone an opportunity to see be a part of this. And maybe we have to think about, rolling attendance to the committee, so there's no more, that we don't pass the 4-member quorum requirement. So
Could we just add to the list, please, Brian, on the level, the expectation, to set expectations on the level of communications the board would like to see when it comes to this? I don't want to have it monthly. I'd like more like updates, and I'm not putting that on you or anybody in particular.
Thank you.
But so like, how would we be communicated with on things as it rolls, right? Because it's going to be an ongoing thing, and for me personally, I don't want to wait till a monthly board meeting, but I also don't want to put extra work, but I would like a level of communication of just updates.
No, we should expect that. I don't think that's unreasonable, that if there's progress, or if there's work being done, or if there are challenges being faced, the board should hear about it, either through Mr. Caravello or through our communications company. That's the whole point of them
Right.
being able to do this work.
Right, yeah, and I just want to say thank you, because I know I had 6 billion questions, and I thank you for answering all of them, so thanks.
Hopefully satisfactorily.
Yeah, I want to do the same thing. I know a lot was put in, Vinny, when you did this. So thank you so much, and thank you for asking, even though we passed it last week, thank you very much for answering all of our questions right now. We really, really appreciate all the hard work that you put into this, so thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions?
I have a comment.
Yes, Mrs. Seward.
Over here in Lost Island. I just want to remind the community that this is a new, fresh referendum, and to not hold grudges or compare the past referendums because of past administration. I just want to remind everybody that even if you don't directly have children in the buildings, that you need to consider the feeling that you may have being a parent of a child or a staff member in Robertsville or Asher. There's a lot of chatter online about why the referendums failed in the past, and I think it was personal feelings towards previous administration. So I just would like everyone to kind of start with a fresh start, new perspective. This is a new referendum. This is a new time in Marlboro, so please just consider fresh slate, clean start. Referendum 2025 is much different than referendum 2015 and 2016, not to compare the two.
Thank you. That is such an important message, and I appreciate that, because, there's lots of confusion just about the number of schools that don't have air conditioning in the district. Some said 2, some thought the middle schools don't have air conditioning. I mean, there's just a lot of misinformation, and we really just need to make sure that, the messages that do come out are intended to clarify and not to confuse. So I appreciate that. Okay, so we're going to move on to our next item. Thank you, Mr. Caravello. We look forward to hearing about this every board meeting. So we will move over to public comments. So do you have a list?
Yes, I have one person on my list, Brianna Maglio.
Okay. Good evening, members of the board. I am here tonight to speak about an issue that affects our students at the most fundamental level. Surprise, the lack of air conditioning in 2 of our elementary schools, Asher Holmes and Robertsville. While the rest of the district schools benefit from climate-controlled environments, these 2 schools, including the one that houses our elementary autism program, remain without adequate air conditioning. This is not just a facilities issue, it's an issue of equity. When some children learn in cool, comfortable classrooms and others are forced to endure high heat and stifling air, we are sending a message, whether we mean to or not, that some students matter more than others, and I find that to be unacceptable. I also work in education and understand the importance of meeting students' basic needs before learning can happen. Maslow's hierarchy of needs reminds us that before any child can learn, grow, or reach their potential, their basic physiological needs must be met. Air conditioning is not a luxury, it's a foundational requirement for safe, focused learning, especially for students with sensory processing challenges or health vulnerabilities. As we look forward to the December referendum, I urge the board to take this issue seriously, not just in facilities planning, but in communications. Many community members are unable to attend or have the time to watch YouTube broadcasts of board meetings and thus do not know of the issues being discussed. Personally, I did not know about the inequity with air conditioning in the district until I saw a recent Facebook post. Unfortunately, this issue affects my own children, as my oldest currently attends Robertsville and my youngest will attend either in kindergarten next year or in first grade the following year. Additionally, other community members may not have or no longer have children in our schools. Thus, they may not realize that two schools are still lacking air conditioning or that one of them serves students with autism. What they do see and worry about are the potential impacts on their property taxes. I know all community members are concerned about the rising cost of living and may fear that allowing the district to complete the HVAC installation in the remaining 2 schools will come out of their annual budgets. My understanding is that this is not the case, but the community is unaware of this fact. This is why I strongly encourage the board to consider hiring a professional communications group to proactively share the facts, explain the urgency, and show the broader community how this investment supports all children in our district, not just a few. When people understand the full story, including the financials, they are more likely to support it for the benefit of our children and our students. As it is now, our district is inequitable with how it accommodates students' classrooms. This is shameful. Equity means ensuring every student in every school has access to a safe and supportive learning environment, and that begins with something as basic as air conditioning. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Maglio. I hope this past conversation that we just had assures you that we are also equally committed to the communications. Can you just state your name and town, please?
Sure.
Hi, good evening. Namaste to all. My name is Swapnil Naik, and I live in Morganville, and I am a proud resident of Marlboro Township. Today, I am representing Hindu Education Foundation, which is a program of Hindu Swayamsevak Sangha. Hindu Swayamsevak Sangha USA is a 501c3 voluntary, non-profit, social, educational, and cultural organization. To honor the teaching community for their exemplary service in educating the students, the first week in May is considered Teacher Appreciation Week in the United States. To celebrate this special occasion, we organize an annual event called Guru Vandana. Guru in Sanskrit means teacher, spiritual master, and mentor, and Vandana means salutations. Guru Vandana means reverence to the teacher. It is an expression of love, gratitude, and reverence towards the teacher. Teachers play a critical role in educating and shaping our children into the future leaders of our country. This kind, patient, hardworking, dedicated, and understanding professionals help mold our children and guide them in positive directions. We entrust our children with the teachers during the school year, and they play a pivotal role in their lives daily. A well-known adage from my culture says, Acharya Devo Bhava, which means teachers are next to God. Teachers are revered in our traditions. They occupy the highest position and role in society. Hindu Education Foundation is working towards building the collaboration with teachers and students to enhance the understanding of Hindu culture. Along with Guru Vandana event, we have conducted a yoga in Edison School District, which was attended by 700 students, Hindu cultural workshop for 80 teachers in Marlboro School District, and Darshana Hindu poster exhibition, which was attended by more than 600 students. HSS has more than 250 weekly chapters in US and nationwide. On behalf of the Hindu Education Foundation, HSS, I humbly bow and thank all the wonderful teachers around. You are our superheroes. Thank you and namaste.
Thank you so much for sharing that. Anyone else? Right after the speaker. Thank you. He's going to yield to you. Thank you, Mr. Kadakia. Hi there.
Hi, I'm Juliana Tammer and I live in Marlboro.
Juliana was going to wait for the second public comments because we saw something later in the agenda, but it's getting to be past her bedtime. So she's going to just kind of say what she wanted to say now so that she can go to sleep.
I just wanted to say that Mrs. Pagante, everybody in Dugan is going to miss you.
Aw. Juliana, thank you so much for sharing that and for just reminding us about how special the people are who work in our schools.
Tough act to follow.
Yeah, I want to see who would like to get up after that act. Thank you, Juliana.
Good night.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Nirav Kadakia, Morganville, New Jersey. I wanted to speak about the AC unit, but before I do, I did want to acknowledge the amazing data for student performances that we had today. And we should all be proud of the results. Many thanks to our teachers and staff. I do have one question or comment on that, right? In the presentation, we did speak about coaches and how invaluable they were. I know we had to make some cuts this year, move folks around. So I'm hoping next year, as we prepare the budget, we're able to, prioritize these positions because it does look like it's really critical in our students' success. Okay, on to the ACs. I know that everyone here wants our schools to have air conditioning. I mean, that's just obvious, right? We don't want our kids to suffer. I have two daughters at Robertsville. My older daughter is about to graduate in a couple months, and my younger one is going to be aged out, or she's going to graduate by the time this project even gets started. So I'm not here to advocate for them. I wish I could, but I'm not. I'm here to advocate for all the other students that we have in both Robertsville and Asher. It is 2025. The fact that we are sitting here or standing here talking about air conditioning in our schools is absolutely pathetic, right? The fact that we have to do a referendum now. This is something that we should have been doing years ago, and unfortunately, referendums had failed. The conversations that we had today, it was very disheartening because I felt like for about a $40,000 spend, 0.7% of the referendum, we're nitpicking. We spent about a good 45 minutes on a $40,000 line item. I understand. It's important. Every penny counts. But we spent 45 minutes on one line item. My concern is, as a board, if you can't agree on these things and come together, how can you go to the community and make sure that they do what's right in passing this referendum? The second thing on that, and another concern, is there's just so much misinformation on social media. And I am hoping that, Mr. Cavello, you had presented this wonderful information. I apologize if I mispronounced your last name. Wonderful information. So I'm hoping that that's something that's consumable for the public in a more consumable way, not just on the website, but maybe Facebook or some kind of social media and stuff like that, just so folks know what we have. I do have one question. Is it a guarantee that we will get 30 to 40% from the state, or is that still a variable right now, depending on whatever factors? And the second question I have is, if we take from the reserves, how will we, quote unquote, refill those reserves? Is that a increase in taxes, or we just have to, hopefully we don't spend other money and we have extra money that we can put into reserves? Thank you.
Thank you.
So it's set at 40%, but our bond counsel stood up here and said that all of them that he has processed, he never achieved the max 40%, that it's more like 30%. So really it's a range. You will receive aid anywhere between 30% and 40%. For your reserves, what I was talking about previously about how we designate a resolution to add to our reserve accounts based off of our end-of-year balances, that's how we replenish our reserves. So whatever our end-of-the-year surplus is, whatever our unspent balance is, we designate a portion of that to our reserves, and then the rest of that goes into our restricted fund balance or our surplus that we use to build the base for our budget. Again, you have balances because you do continue to build your base and raise your taxes, so I can't say that the balances aren't from taxes. They might as well might be, but sometimes things in the year you have breakage over. So you achieve a higher surplus in one year than you do another year because you have breakage over things, whether it be retirements, whether it be unfinished projects, or gas goes down, utilities go down, anything can fluctuate what your balances are year to year. So that's why we continually monitor our surpluses each month, and that's noted on the board secretary's report. That's why we submit it to the board, to basically show what our balances are and do we have a healthy net position for the district.
Also, Vinny, can you please give just the Cliff's Notes of how long we've been working on HVAC in the elementary schools and the middle schools? Because this isn't a project that just started recently. I feel like
since I've been here for 5 years and 2 months. So we started with Dugan and DeFino.
Not like 2020 is acceptable for no air conditioning. I just want you to know this is a long.
Yeah, well, none of our elementary schools had air conditioning in the classrooms. So we started with Dugan and DeFino. We were creative with our ESSER funds because we could utilize that towards ventilation. So we were able to finish 2 schools during then. And then we just did Marlboro Elementary that's just closing up now and should be starting up by June through the source of a ROD grant, which was also basically, I believe, 30% they funded the project for.
Thank you. Anyone else have any other questions? Or please come up.
Hi, Angela Colby from Marlboro. I had a couple of questions related to the agenda and some that were not on the agenda today. I know that it was mentioned by Mrs. Mendez a couple of meetings ago, and I just wanted to find out what the results were from the letter regarding DEI that was supposed to be signed by the district and the pull of the funding. Wanted to know what the status with that, what that was. I also wanted, since we're going into discussions with the YMCA and after-school care, wondering if we could ask them to see if we could bus the students that attend ESY to the summer camp that they offer. I know some parents have issues finding summer camps, and this would be a good opportunity for the YMCA and for the students that attend ESY. A recommendation, and I would like to find out a little bit more information you have on the agenda regarding OPRA requests. I was just wondering about how much money we have received as a district for OPRA requests, and if there was a way to increase the revenue in the district to increase the amount that is charged for an OPRA request if it is not related to your student or to your child or a student record. So if it's something that's miscellaneous, OPRA request, or something like that, can we charge that person an additional fund to help put that money back into the district? And also, I've seen on social media that there have been several school bus incidences related to safety concerns, bus drivers running stop signs, speeding through red lights. And I was just wondering, with the amount of buses that are contracted, if we were going to continue and do an evaluation of that current company and see if there's something else that we can work with Colts Neck or other school districts to make sure that our students are safe while they are transported to and from school. Thank you.
Do you want to respond to some of those, Mr. Caravello?
So the letter for DEI, I'm not.
My question on that one was on the executive order and how it impacts school funding, and I know you said we would discuss that.
Okay, so
that was my question later that I would bring up in old business.
I haven't received any information from like my associations that I'm a part of. As of I'm under the assumption that like federal funding and stuff will be.
I'll deal with that.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that might be more of a legal conversation, depending on what knowledge he has, but I don't have anything regarding that.
Oh, yeah, I was going to ask that in exec.
We're waiting for Val to return for an exec. So we can have that today. If Mr.
Okay.
Yes.
Thank you.
Oprah requests. So I am allowed, most Oprah requests come through electronically. Most of them are requested to produce those documents electronically, so we don't charge. The only event that we do charge is if the amount is, if the request is overbroad or it contains a lot of documents, a lot of emails, and will take a lot of the district time and effort to put together, you're allowed to put together a special service charge and submit that to the requester. And you're not allowed to go forward with the request until the requester agrees to pay that amount in full and has to pay it up front, I believe. I've submitted special service charges to requesters. I've never received any of those paid. So those requests have technically just ceased. So I have not made any revenue from Oprah. It's really just, it's through email. The only money that the district is really, they're really not making any money because the amount of time and effort it takes for me to pull each Oprah request and go through things and redact things and follow up. That's where the district is losing money. The money you can't see is my time taken away from other things. I know you had emailed me about a bus incident, and sorry for not getting back to you in a timely manner. I don't know if transportation had reached out to you, but I would definitely follow up with you. And I agree with you. When it comes to contractors, we want to vet to make sure that we have the correct contractors in place that meet the needs of our district. We don't want any contractor that's not really going to fit our mold or the way we do things. So thank you for bringing that to my attention, and that's something I'm working with transportation for next year, but we will need them for next year because unfortunately I think we have just too many open packages and too many open vacancies for drivers that it's very hard to fill. And we've tried a lot of things, a lot of different things. As far as sending a survey out, it may just be where if we know we don't like a contractor, we're just not, if they win the quote, we're going to re-quote it out and just not have them anymore. I can definitely ask YMCA. I know they're doing the summer camp at, I think it's, I know it's between Defino and Morel. I believe it's Defino. It may be Morel, so I'm not specifically 100% sure. But we can ask them if they have a busing service that parents would be interested in utilizing if you want to go to, I guess, is there a camp at the main campus on Robertsville Road? Is that what you were referencing, Mrs. Basant? Okay, so the summer camp is at one of our schools. Okay, so I can ask them, if there's a busing option for them to bring the kids to the central location where they're going to have it. You're welcome.
Be helpful also, I think, just to also know what the demand is, so that if you are talking to them, is it one child, 10 children? How many children are we talking about, so they have a sense of what the demand would be? Okay, thank you. Any more speakers?
Scott Samaya, Marlboro. So I'm here, just like a lot of other people, talking about the referendum. And Mr. Caravello, if I say anything incorrectly, please correct me when I'm done. I'm a forensic accountant. I've led numerous forensic investigations on behalf of municipalities and school districts, just like Marlboro. I have given presentations in front of boards of education, just like this. So I'm uniquely qualified, I think, to kind of put together an executive summary of what I think and dumb things down, for lack of a better term, for people to better understand. So essentially, the district has two pockets of money from which to pay for everyday expenses and special projects, like the HVAC upgrades to Asher and Robertsville. Pocket A is the operating fund, which is used for everyday expenses, such as paying salaries and benefits for the teachers, administrators, and staff, among other everyday district expenses. Pocket B is the capital reserve fund, which Mr. Caravello talked about. The $5 million project cost is being paid for from Pocket B, the capital reserve fund, including the bond counsel fees, the architectural and engineering fees, and the 40,000 PR firm hired to assist with marketing the referendum. I understand people have concerns such as, why are we spending $40,000 on a PR firm when we eliminated 5 positions in the district for next year? The $40,000 coming out of Pocket B, the capital reserve fund, has absolutely nothing to do with the operating fund budget deficit that resulted in eliminating those 5 positions. There are restrictions as to what the capital reserve funds can be used for, and unfortunately, that money cannot be transferred to the operating fund and be used for teacher salaries in any way. So this is an irrelevant argument against the referendum. And remember, yes, the district eliminated the positions, but didn't lay off anybody. Every single person who did not retire was reassigned within the district, which happens in organizations around the world every day. The referendum is a lever the district can use to get about 30% of the project funded from the state. Most importantly, it's critical for the public to understand that no matter what you may see or hear, as of today, the referendum has a zero-tax impact on the community. Plain and simple, our taxes will not be increased as a direct result of the passage of this referendum. So from where I sit, there's no reason not to pass it. In closing, my children will not be impacted by this project. My kids go to Dugan and Abbott, so they're lucky to have central AC. However, I believe that all kids in our district should be afforded the same basic resources which allow for the best learning environments. Simply put, equality for all in this instance is not only a positive, it is imperative. So pass the referendum. I think it's a no-brainer. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Samaya. Did you want to correct him?
So when we talk about, that was a great analogy with Pocket A and Pocket B. But when we talk about the associated costs that we have to put up front, they're coming from Pocket A right now. So they are coming from the operating budget to get this started. We can filter that back through the referendum where, if it is approved, we can supplant those costs out of Pocket B. But without an approved referendum, I can't touch the reserve account for stuff like the communications or the professional fees, everything that was on that board. So in translation, it can be coming from Pocket B as long as we approve the referendum. But right now, to get it started and to get the foundation going, we have to use what's in our operating budget.
So we're advancing it out of the operating budget until, in fact, the referendum is passed. And if the referendum is passed, then you will reimburse the operating budget with funds that come out from the referendum.
Correct, because we will associate those costs of what we put in for with the project. But that's why I keep saying that if it doesn't pass, you eat all of those costs. And when you eat all those costs, it's in an operating budget.
You get 1 minute. That's just the rules.
That includes the bond counsel fees too, right?
Includes all of those fees, yes.
Okay. Which was passed unanimously? Wasn't?
You know, I don't remember, but I
don't know
do
if it
think
was
the
passed
other costs
unanimously.
were passed by the full board. Yeah.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Anyone else? Mr. Pollack?
Yes, bond counsel was passed 9-0.
9-0, thank you.
Adam Pollack, Marlboro, New Jersey. Number one, wanted to call out that it's Teacher Appreciation Week, so wanted to send out a shout out to all the teachers and all the administrators, everyone who's supporting the teachers. We love our teachers here in Marlboro. I also wanted to give recognition to Mr. Ballone and the administration on that student achievement presentation. I thought that was very strong. I thought the numbers going up, all that, the anecdotal stuff about Marlboro from the high school and all of that, and the acceptance rate into vocational and to the magnet school is super impressive, and we should all be super proud of that on Teacher Appreciation Week also. So thank you. I also wanted to say thank you to everybody for taking the feedback from the community on the YMCA and the aftercare program. I know that was a hot button item for many of us in the community, and I'm just glad that there's action being done there to make it better for everybody. And definitely that delayed opening thing resonates, so thank you for that. On the referendum, I just want to say I couldn't agree more with every other parent that got up here and is supportive of the referendum. I think it's an equity situation that everybody in our town should be on an even playing field, and every student here should have air conditioning in the school. So I think it's pretty clear that the community is very supportive of that, and we appreciate that the board is moving forward with the referendum. The thing that Vinny said about all of the different ancillary costs, be it Laura Bishop or being the architect or being the special counsel or the special election, if you add all that up, it would seem like it was $275,000. And to Vinny's point, on a $103 million budget, a $5 million referendum, sometimes it's just the cost of doing business to get some of these things done and make it be successful. So I just really think that I think one of the big miscommunications that happened this week was that all of those ancillary costs were included in the 5.3, right? It's not an addition, it's in the number that we're being quoted. I'm surprised that no one has brought up yet that just by waiting, we've increased our costs, right? Like even since the last time that we've talked about this, it went from 3 million to 5 million because of things that are happening. It's only gonna go up more if we as a community don't do something about it. So it's in everyone's best interest to move forward. And as a parent who does not have any children in those schools, and my children are in Dugan, I think the more we come together as allies across the community, and this is not a situation where just because my kids are in a school that has air conditioning, I'm as supportive of this as anybody to get it passed. So I think that we should make that clear to the community that we, all the parents, regardless of school, are super supportive of passing the referendum. So thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Pollack. Anyone else?
Dan Bono, Marlboro, New Jersey. Thank you to the board. Mr. Ballone, well done on the results. I missed half of them, but thank you very much for all the hard work. Board, thank you guys for all of the questions on Vinny's presentation. Vinny, thank you very much for the presentation and putting out facts. Facts are a very important thing, and I'll get back to that. I want to thank Ms. Seward for tying a bow at the very end of that. It's important to get air conditioning for these kids, no matter what school your kids go to, whether they go to school or not. But when it comes to facts, I missed the last meeting. You guys voted. You passed the PR firm, for lack of a better term. It was approved. And people on this board took to social media with falsehoods. Marlboro didn't have -5 teachers for next year. They were reallocated based on needs, based on schools, based on retirements. So to put a tit for tat in your posts, that's not what it is. That's fear-mongering, and that's gaslighting. And to do it on a website of your election for a position not on this board, it's all dishonest and disingenuous, and I don't appreciate it as a community member. Thank you, Mr. Caravello, for clarifying for the public. Yes, this is going to cost money. We trust in the board to do what's absolutely necessary for the best of our children. It is so frustrating to sit here 4 hours to listen to members bicker back and forth as they push their personal agendas. My wife has been coming for years and unfortunately is not well enough to be here tonight. You promised her, a taxpayer, a staff member, air conditioning for the 2 remaining schools. Dugan was built decades after Robertsville, so why was it prioritized for an HVAC system first? It is your job to put the students of Marlboro first. I'm proud to say, in this town, all students are equal, all schools are equal, and the administrators are trying to pass a budget that puts our children first. This referendum is not a secret administrative agenda. It is here to help our schools. So I ask, please put your personal agendas aside. Work together. Work like you're running for a re-election of the Board of Ed and knock on doors. Stop the haters from spreading false information. Stop the spread in our adult communities. Help the cause. Don't hurt it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Bono. Anyone else for? Anyone else for public comments? Motion to close public comments. All in favor? Anyone against? Public comment is closed. Thank you very much. We will continue with our agenda. Let me just bring us up to communications. Mr. Caravello, I think you said you had an announcement.
Yes, so I have communications that was sent to me, well, actually was written to Michael, and I'd like to read it for him because it is about him. Dear Michael, on behalf of the Center to Combat Anti-Semitism and Reinforce Multicultural Acceptance and Jewish Federation in the heart of New Jersey, thank you for your dedication, support, and hard work in bringing the Hate Ends Now cattle car exhibit to fruition. It has been an absolute pleasure to work with someone as thoughtful, caring, and committed to building a community free from hatred and intolerance. Thank you for all you do for our kids. They are lucky to have you, and we are fortunate to have such a strong leader who fights for what is right. Appreciatively, Stacy Gowan.
Thank you, Mr. Caravello. That brings us back to remembering exactly what we do and why we do it and the impact it has. So, Mr. Ballone, thank you for that recognition, well-deserved, and a message that we can never stop communicating. So thank you for that. All right. Mr. Ballone, HIB?
And I'll follow that with the HIB report from April 25th through May 1st has 0 incidents.
Thank you. I will remind everyone of our meeting dates. We will meet again on May 20th. That will be a regular meeting. And then we'll meet again on Tuesday, June 17th, which will also be a regular meeting. Okay, we're going to move on to organization matters. Ms. Mendez, would you mind reading the organization matters?
Sure. The superintendent of schools submits the following resolutions for approval. 1, board secretary. 2, board attorney. 3, board attorney for special education matters. 4, insurance consultant. 5, insurance agent. 6, board auditor. 7, school physician. 8, board designee. 9, public agency compliance officer. 10, district section 504 coordinator. 11, section 504 coordinator for program accessibility. 12, approval of qualified purchasing agent for bidding, purchasing, and sale of property. 13, procurement of goods and services through state agency for the 2025-2026 school year. 14, purchase professional services. 15, Open Public Records Act. 16, designation of legal newspapers. 17, tax sheltered annuity companies. I so move.
Thank you. Can I have a second? Ms. Gandhi, any discussions on any of these items? Mr. Caravello, will you do a roll call, please?
Mr. Hyatt?
Yes.
Mr. Lalansky?
Yes.
Mrs. Seward?
Yes.
Mrs. Palomo?
Yes.
Mrs. Carrero?
Yes.
Mrs. Gandhi?
Yes.
Mrs. Mendez,
Yes.
and Mr. Cohen.
Yes. Okay, moving on to our next item on the agenda, it's financial and business operation matters. Mr. Wolanski, would you mind?
Of course.
Thank you.
Financial and business operations matters. The superintendent of schools submits the following resolutions for approval. 1, final 2025-2026 school year budget adoption. 2, adjustment for healthcare costs. 3, use of bank cap. 4, maintenance reserve withdrawal. 5, travel and related expense reimbursement. 6, authorized signatures. 7, uniform minimum chart of accounts. 8, after-school sports and enrichment programs. 9, renewal of contract educational data services for purchasing procedures for the 25-26 school year. 10, contract renewal year 3, food service management company FSMC contract. 11, harassment, intimidation, bullying, HIB report. 12, approval agreement, E-Rate Consulting, Inc. 13, approval addendum to extend the professional service agreement between MTBOE and ESS Northeast LLC. 14th, approval of agreement, landscaping services. 15, amended resolution out of district placement for the 24-25 school year. 16, travel. I so move.
Thank you. Can I have a second? Ms. Seward, thank you. Any discussions on this item or any of these items? I just want to make one comment, Mr. Caravello and Mr. Ballone. Thank you for presenting a budget that was manageable for our district and had very minimal impacts overall, considering the fact that from all of the press and discussions across the state, this has not been a good budget year for some of the districts, and while I feel their pain and we hope that they are able to manage through this, we're thankful, I'm thankful in my seat to sort of say that you've made this much more of an easier discussion. And a lot of that also has to, go toward decisions that previous boards have been proactive with on as well. So thank you for making this an easier vote for us this year. With that, I will turn it over to Mr. Caravello for a roll call.
Mrs. Mendez,
Yes.
Mrs. Paloma,
No to 1, no to 10, yes to everything else.
Mrs. Carrero,
Yes.
Mrs. Gandhi,
Yes.
Mr. Hyatt,
Yes to all.
Mrs. Seward,
Yes.
Mr. Olansky,
Yes.
and Mr. Cohen.
Yes. Moving on to curriculum matters. Mr. Hyatt, would you read this?
Sure. Curriculum matters. Number 1, curriculum guides. I'm sorry. The superintendent of schools submits the following resolutions for approval. 1, curriculum guides. I so move.
Can I have a second, please? Ms. Mendez, can I have any discussions on this? Nope, thank you. Mr. Caravello?
Mrs. Seward,
Yes.
Mrs. Paloma,
Yes.
Mrs. Carrero,
Yes.
Mrs. Gandhi,
Yes.
Mr. Olansky,
Yes.
Mrs. Mendez,
Yes.
Mr. Hyatt,
Yes.
and Mr. Cohen.
Yes. Moving on to the next item, personnel matters. Ms. Mendez, would you read that?
The superintendent of schools submits the following resolutions for approval. 1, retirement. 2, resignations. 3, full-time teaching staff.
Page 32.
4, part-time teaching staff. 5, school psychologists, 25-26 school year. 6, certificated administrators, 25-26 school year. 7, operational administrators. 8, stipend assistant supervisor of buildings and grounds, 25-26 school year. 9, non-aligned certificated administrators. 10, non-aligned non-certificated administrators. 11, non-aligned support staff, 25-26 school year. 12, secretarial personnel, 25-26 school year. 13, bookkeeper and clerk, 25-26 school year. 14, special education instructional assistants, 25-26 school year. 15, kindergarten basic skills instructional assistants, 25-26 school year. 16, school monitors, 25-26 school year. 17, school aides, 25-26 school year. 18, buildings and ground staff, mechanic, groundskeepers, and maintenance mechanics, 25-26 school year. 19, head custodians and night custodial supervisor, 25-26 school year. 20, stipend head custodians and night custodial supervisor, 25-26 school year. 21, career, 25-26 school year. 22, bus drivers, hours and salaries, 25-26 school year. 23, bus attendants, hours and salaries, 25-26 school year. 24, computer technicians, 1, 25-26 school year. Computer technician, 2, 25-26 school year. 26, district network technician, 25-26 school year. 27, registered nurse, 25-26 school year. 28, permanent floater, school nurse, 25-26 school year. 29, unpaid leaves of absence. I so move.
Thank you. Can I have a second, please? Mr. Lolansky. Any discussions? Mr. Gross, you have something you want to
I
add?
just want to make sure, since we have several pages and a lot of different items on here, board members certainly have their right to vote yes, no, or abstain on any one of these items. Just to make Mr. Caravello's job a lot easier, if you're going to be voting no or abstaining on any of these items, if you could just please designate the page number it's on, the item number that it is, and what number it is in the column. Because, for example, item 1, page 19, item 1, the second name down, etc. Just so it'll make it easier for him to be able to tally correctly. All right? No, I just said, you could just say page 19, paragraph number 1, second name down, third name down, or you can vote no on everything if you want, but if you want to vote yes or no on any individual item, which you have every right to do, in order to make it easier, you have to be able to designate for Mr. Caravello to know what you're voting no on and what you're abstaining on. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any other discussions on this item? Mr. Caravello.
So before we take a vote for number 15, kindergarten basic skills instructional assistants, 2025-2026 school year. So Doris Gross, the salary needs to be amended, so it is not $18,030.38. So there needs to be a correction. It's going to be $18,280.38. Okay, roll call vote. Mrs. Seward?
Yes to all, abstain to number 9.
Mrs. Palomo?
Yes to all, no to number 9.
Mrs. Carrero?
Yes to all.
Mrs. Gandhi?
Yes to all.
Mr. Hyatt?
Yes to all.
Mr. Alansky?
Yes to all.
Mrs. Mendez?
Yes to all except page 35, number 9. That's a no for me.
Okay, Mr. Cohen?
Yes to all.
5-2. Everything passes.
Yep, so everything passes.
Okay, moving on. That brings us up to old business. Any old business? Ms. Mendez.
Yep, I just wanted to formally raise my question, and thank you for waiting until I got back, on the potential of school funding being impacted by the executive order potentially, and so I just wanted to raise that.
Right, and as we previously agreed, we would do that in exec.
Yes, thank you.
Because that's attorney-client privilege.
Yep.
And he's giving us advice.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other old business? I'm sorry?
I just wanted to take a minute, and I don't think it's really old business, but I just wanted to say thank you to all the parents that have young ones at home that came and spoke on behalf of this referendum, supporting it. I appreciate it because some of you don't even have kids that go to these two schools that need air conditioning. So it means a lot. Thank you for supporting the board in the communications firm that we agreed to hire. So I just want to thank our community, and I want to thank the parents.
Thank you. Any other old business?
Mr. Cohen, just one thing. In here, we talked about MOESC, and I know at one point we talked about the strategy for increasing, like, what we were going to pay bus drivers and all of that. I just was curious, have we had any success with that? And you don't have to tell me today, just where it stood. Did that strategy prove successful? Just curious.
So we brought that back, and we would actually have to create a sidebar, open up the union contract to negotiate that, because it was stipulated that we would have to pay a bonus to everyone. So we just wouldn't be able to afford that. You're talking about the sign-on bonus? And
Yeah.
Yeah, so we had to pump the brakes on that, because that's a larger scale item, which it requires negotiations with the CBU.
Okay, understood. Thank you.
Any other old business? Okay, before we move on to new business, Mr. Bolone, I believe you have some retirement comments.
I do. And as we did at the last meeting, we'll start with any staff members who are in the audience. So we'll start with retirement comments for Rosemary Morgante. I certainly can't follow the public comments that were made, but I'll read what I have prepared here. Since September 2009, the chimes of her xylophone's famous chords have echoed through the Dugan hallways each morning, marking the start of a new school day. After years of faithful service, Rosemary Morgante has announced her intention to retire. Throughout her time at Dugan, Rose served as the steadfast heart of the main office, working alongside 3 principals, 4 vice principals, and 2 secretarial partners. She took great pride in supporting the staff and students, remaining a pillar of consistency in an office that experienced many changes over the years. Some of her fondest memories include participating alongside her close friends, the teachers and staff, in talent show acts that brought joy and laughter to the community. She lovingly refers to Dugan as her, quote, unquote, home away from home, and shared how deeply she will miss it. Ro looks forward to traveling and cherishing time with her growing family, her husband Rich, their sons, and their wives, fully embracing the next chapter with excitement. In her own words, deciding to retire was an extremely difficult decision, but I will keep close to my heart all of the special friendships I have made. As they say, once a dragon, always a Dugan dragon. Cheers to a well-earned retirement, Ro.
Congratulations, Mrs. Morgante, and thank you for touching so many lives. And, you know, we had firsthand evidence of that. So congratulations to you, and best wishes for your next journey.
Okay, the next comment are comments for Deborah Lamoot. Mrs. Deborah Lamoot began working for the Marlboro Township Public Schools in 1994. At the conclusion of the 24-25 school year, she will have completed 31 years of service, having taught solely at Marlboro Elementary School. Mrs. Lamoot taught second grade for 10 years and has spent the last 21 as the school librarian. A couple of her favorite memories in the classroom were when she ran an Amelia Bedelia hat fashion show and when she ran a Mother's Day book club in which moms and their children read Ramona and Her Mother by Beverly Cleary at home, and then moms came in to discuss the book with the class and enjoy treats. Mrs. Lamoot has left her mark on the district and her students by always trying new and innovative ideas in the library. She has always led school-wide events that impact both teaching and learning, as well as school culture and climate. Mrs. Lamoot has oftentimes been referred to as the school's cruise director, organizing contests, staff luncheons, and school-wide events. In her retirement, she plans to spend more time playing pickleball and being able to take small getaways. In addition, she plans to continue working a few hours a week at a family-owned restaurant. We wish her well in her retirement and thank her for her years of service to the district. And finally, retirement comments for Deborah Longo. Mrs. Deborah Longo began working for the Marlboro Township Public School District as a substitute teacher in 1998, subbing at Marlboro Elementary School. She said she liked to sub exclusively there because it was one of the most welcoming places she had ever worked. During the 2000-2001 school year, she took on a long-term position, and then the following year was hired full-time. In her time here, she has taught in grades 5, 4, and 2. In addition to her work in the classroom, Mrs. Longo was a leader amongst her peers by serving as a building delegate to the MTEA for many years. When asked about her most fond memories during her career, she noted how much she enjoys it when her former students purposefully come past her classroom as they enter the building, greeting her and wishing her a great day. Being a resident of town, Mrs. Longo is fortunate enough to see her students as they grow beyond the walls of their elementary school. She enjoys running into her former students in the Marlboro community and learning how much of an influence she has had on their lives. It really warms her heart when she gets to see the fruits of her labor. In her retirement, she plans to travel with her husband and looks forward to spending time with her family. We wish her well in her retirement and thank her for her years of service to the district.
Thank you very much, and to our retirees, we wish you also the same. Best success in your next endeavors, and enjoy your retirement, and thank you for your tremendous service. Yes? Oh, see, we started a trend here.
Started a trend. I've got to add it up now. 27, then we had a 31, right?
That's 58. We're up to 58.
And then 21.
58, so
79.
79. 79 years. Yep. A lot of institutional knowledge is going on to brighter days and sunnier days. All right, we are up to new business. Any new business?
I have a little bit of new business.
Yes.
I thank Mr. Pollack for bringing up Teacher Appreciation Week, but I would be doing a disservice to my mom, who is a school nurse, for not bringing up Nurse Appreciation Week. So I just wanted to commend the 11 nurses that we have on our agenda, but specifically our school nurse at Dugan, Carrie Marcus. My son is the king of boo-boos, and she really takes such good care of each of the children. She communicates clearly with the parents, and I'm just so grateful that there's someone in the building that he trusts and he can go to when he needs to take a walk or he's just not feeling well, whatever the case may be. But thank you to our school nurses as well, especially since they're in the buildings with the teachers. I don't want them to be forgotten. So thanks, nurses.
I don't think as a parent, we all have some special affection for the nurses in our school for what they've done for our kids. So thank you for mentioning that. That was super important. Any other new business?
I do have some new business
Yes.
that I'll try to get through quickly. I just have to say it tonight. I wanted to speak about something that many refer to as shared sacrifice. When we talk about our budget, which I do believe was very well prepared by Mr. Caravello, we talk about where cuts are made. Although 5 positions were not cut, instructional positions were removed, the burden falling on the remaining coaches to absorb those responsibilities. We heard from one of those coaches at a meeting, as well as some other teachers and coaches that have spoken to board members about the responsibilities that will be absorbed by the loss of those positions. Well, I understand Mr. Caravello's job is to make money work. I I don't believe that it should be at the lack of, at the cutting of instructional positions. With that being said, we're faced tonight with a decision that district administrators are taking full liberty with their raises, some even doubling and going retroactive to receive a raise. I believe that this is extremely top-heavy, and when we talk about shared sacrifice, we talk about the sacrifice of the taxpayer, the sacrifice of instructional positions, and we should also be talking about the sacrifice from the top down. I believe it's important. I know it's going to be unpopular with the 4 or 5 people that come to the board meetings, but I know from interfacing with our community, it is not an unpopular opinion. And I really had hoped that we would find other ways to cut spending, especially when we have found money for raises and PR firms and exponential spending to keep instructional positions. Because like we've seen in the past, once those coaches are cut and that face time is lost, those positions rarely, if ever, come back. So I just wanted to bring that to light, and I feel like it is my responsibility to the constituents to make these points. It's not anything to do with what's said at public comment. 2 positions were removed. That is a fact. Those are FaceTime positions with our students. That is a fact. Their work will be absorbed by other teachers and coaches. That is a fact. And that's just what it is on paper. So I wanted to clarify that. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other discussions or any comments? Ms. Carrero?
So in terms of the vote about what you just brought, a constituent with retroactive, I'm not going to say anything, but I cannot imagine how demoralizing that was to be denied. So to right that wrong, absolutely. Doing more to get less, that sends the wrong message. This is about retention being a vital asset. Earlier this year, we raised the rates for subs because they were competitive. We want to keep the best in our district. And I mean, happy admin, happy teachers, happy kids, they achieve. So yeah, to stay competitive, and needs change in a district, and reallocation is always a part of any job, and that's exactly what happened with this last year also. So that's all, but I look forward to continued collaboration and keeping people on board.
I just want to clarify then, since I can only say very limited on my vote in that section, but as someone who was on the board last year, I had reasons for my no vote, which out of respect to Mr. Ballone, I did share in advance my thoughts, and thank you we had a nice conversation. Mr. Cohen was there as well, and we had a healthy conversation, and so I just want to say thank you for that, but there were reasons behind my no vote, and so I was on the board last year, and I stand behind how I felt last year and my vote this year, at no disrespect or lack of appreciation for anybody in this district, but as a board member here last year, there were reasons why I voted no to that one. But again, appreciate all the work that everybody does.
Thank you. Any other discussions, comments? Okay, new business is closed. Let's move on to public comments. Anyone wanting to speak for a second round of public comments? Mr. Carroll, do you have a list? All right, there's no list, so please come up.
Good evening, everyone. On behalf of Mrs. Balomo and the Dugan PTO, we just wanted to take a moment during public comments to say a few words about someone who means so much to so many of us, our amazing school secretary, Mrs. Morgante. She recently announced her retirement, and while we are all so happy for her, it's impossible to not feel a little heartbroken too. She's been more than just the person behind the desk. She's truly been the heart of the front office. A second mom to all the kids, helping them when they forget something at home or need answers to their questions. To our kids, she is someone they trust and will miss seeing every school day. Speaking for Mrs. Belomo and the PTO, we can say she's been absolutely incredible. Whether it was tracking us down to answer emails, helping with field trip forms, calling to check in on the kids when we forget to call them out sick, she was always there looking out for us. No matter how busy she was or how crazy the day had become, she made sure we had everything we needed to run events smoothly. We don't know what we will do without her. We'll miss our office chats, her stories about her family, and just the comfort of knowing she was there. She brought so much warmth, kindness, and humor to the front office. It really won't be the same without her. Even though we'll miss her dearly, we are so happy she gets to spend time doing all the things she loves. She has more than earned it. Thank you so much for everything. You'll always be a part of the Dugan PTO family, and we will miss you so much. And again, as we said, once a dragon, always a dragon.
Thank you for sharing that. And again, it just is a continued demonstration of how every position in our schools are extremely important and valuable. Any other public comments? Thank you. Motion to close public comments. Ms. Mendez, seconded Mr. Hyatt. All in favor? Thank you. We're going to go into executive session next. Can I have a motion to go into executive session for matters of attorney-client privilege? Ms. Mendez, second. Ms. Seward, all in favor? Anyone opposed? Thank you. We will not be returning into a public session tonight. Thank you, everyone, for being here.